Do you see it on now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not sure if it went through, but thank you for that. Okay. Okay, so for today's meeting, we're just going to go over a quick overview, which is basically about us, our board, regions and chapters, membership, programs, and then some updates, and then we'll take some questions. It's not meant to be a long meeting. It's meant to just inform everybody and then also seek you all's assistance in terms of how we all want to go forward collectively as a group. Okay. So initially, the concept for Black Coaches Canada was formed by myself, Paul Martin, and Rick Titus in 2020. Initially, it was in 2016, we met in opposition and discussed the need for representation in our community, what we were seeing at the time, specifically as Black coaches and the challenges we faced. The conversation continued over the years, and it's not just only the conversation Rick and myself. Many of us in the community have had the same conversation, between ourselves. Also, many community groups have also had the same discussions around bringing forth change. So eventually, the group was formalized in the light of the racial injustice we all saw last year with George Floyd. We formed an executive board. From that, we also formed a senior advisory committee, as well as an elders board. And then we also wanted to make sure we have regional directors. We'll talk a bit about the regional directors. We've had a couple meetings thus far. We haven't moved as fast in that area as we'd like to. It's going to be a slow process, but we're going to continue to do that. It's really important. The regional directors play a major role in our association, because without national coast-to-coast representation, you don't get taken as seriously at the national sports level. And Canada is obviously difficult to maintain that representation. And it's not just what we face as a sports body. Any organization planning to be national has the same challenges. So this is going to be really important as we go forward to have the representation, but also voices across the nation in each area, coast to coast, to be able to represent what we're looking for. So the group's mandate is to address specifically one thing alone as a starting point. And that one thing we're addressing is anti-Black racism in sports in Canada. We plan to do that by advocating for justice, social justice, and for rights, also for representation. And we plan to also provide education and development services. What's our vision? Our vision is to be a leader, an advocate, and provide the voice for people of color within sports and in the sports administration in the country. The whole point of us being leaders is not about us being Black. It's about being leaders of the sport. It's about doing what's right, fixing some of the challenges that we know we have faced and we see that is betterment for all. It's not about the fact that the color of our skin makes us any better, any worse, or any different. What makes us have a different example is the color of our skin, because once again, the history we know we faced over such a long period of time. So we pledge to come together as a group to provide guidance and leadership, transparency, education, development, mentorship, more importantly than anything else, succession planning. If we do not have the next generation to take our seats at the table that we're now planning to take up and to open those doors, then how can we possibly go forward in the future? We might just end up repeating some of the same mistakes of the past. So communication, cooperation is very important for all of us to work together. And through all that, we want to have one main vision and goal, which is the pursuit of excellence in everything we do. We already have that as a community. Many of us who know each other and have worked with each other know that we have to be successful, not because of, in spite of, right? And so through that, our excellence, we hope to share and show as a vision for all of the country. Our mission is to continually advocate for Black and minority individuals within the sports community and to promote awareness more than anything else around the issues that we face. We have to become a voice. There's now a big campaign across where many people are now acknowledging what they're seeing. So it's see it, say something, stop it, right? So we have to be those advocates. We have to be the leaders in our areas to be able to, bring about that change of awareness. And so we want to be able to identify and educate as well as promote and support our community. In specifically attaining leadership positions. Without having that leadership, then it doesn't amount to much. We can also get someone in a position of leadership, and if that person does not practice succession planning, bringing another one forward, then how are we going to really change the challenges and the landscape of the past? We have to all embody and practice each one, reach one, each one, teach one, and then each one succeed one. If we don't do that, we will not see long-lasting systemic change. Transparency. We want to make sure that we operate in a manner that is transparent. Often there's many comments made about our community in terms of transparent or in terms of operations and how we plan to operate and govern ourselves. We are taking this as a major area of leadership that we will continue to make sure that we are transparent and accountable. And that is in the way of showing annual reports. That's in the way of continuing to have those reports be audited from a financial perspective, issuing quarterly reports, making sure we have organizational committees and the reports by those committees. We will follow our bylaws and policies that we're now finalizing. We will also follow a strategic plan, which will be shared with the group. And then we'll also have a definite nominations and election process as we move forward through our governance and our processes and procedures. So what is our setup and our structure? Who are we? Our structure organizationally is set up with, as we mentioned, the elders and advisors. You can see that will have oversight of the board. The board then below that will have subcommittees or working groups. Those working groups, as you see there, will be broken out into subsections. Regional directors will then oversee that process, and then the members will tie into that. We'll have 3 class types of memberships, and that will be one paid membership, one honorarium, and then one lifetime class. Right now, we're all sitting as honorary type members because there's no payment for membership. It's free, totally open to anyone and everyone, and we want to leave it at that until after our first year. Our goal was to provide leadership, direction, and guidance from a slow process. It wasn't about rushing out and protesting and making stances and statements. We wanted to be more substantive and also long-term, long-lasting by spending the time. Although it was drawing a lot of really good attention given the events of George Floyd, it might be good to be out in front, but many organizations are already doing that. So we collectively felt as a group it would be better for us to strategize and plan for the future to make sure that we were prepared for what might come after that. When everything dies down and people aren't paying attention anymore, we wanted to make sure that we had a good solid foundation to move forward. And hence, that's our structure. So currently, our board, we had Rick Titus be our vice president. He vacated that position by resigning, citing personal issues at the time in terms of just time and commitment and whatnot. So we had a process whereby we then nominate people to the board members, executive committee. And then from that nomination, the board takes a vote until we come to our AGM, where we will bring the voting of membership in different positions before the members. But currently that is done by the executive board who votes in positions. So we had our vote where we had 2 nominees nominated for the position. And the successful candidate was Jennifer Granger. I'll introduce Jennifer to you. Jennifer, I don't think is on the call right now, but I will introduce her information and background to you. So Jennifer Granger was already on our board previously as our secretary. Her background is that she's a consultant and a proprietor of her Finest Concepts consulting company. She's a former executive in the financial and tech industries. She's an entrepreneur, a volunteer and activist, and a self-proclaimed humanist. She has 30 plus years of experience with not-for-profits and small to mid-sized organizations. Jennifer is also was involved with change management at Ontario Soccer for over a decade. One of her lead roles was in helping to develop and be one of the leads on club excellence and long-term athletic development. So she has a long history of developing organizations from a structural standpoint. She represented the organization at various provincial and national events, speaking in front of FIFA, CONCACAF, TFC, Pan Am Games, Respect in Sports, Canada for Life Sport, and so on and so forth. She's a recognized member of the Technical Women's Committee as well. Jennifer also holds multiple coaching licenses with Ontario Soccer and with NCCP, and she's also had some training for accessibility with the FA and also UEFA. As a player, Jennifer has had multiple MVPs and all Canadian All-Star awards in both basketball and soccer in her youth. And a little bit more recently, she earned a silver medal at the World Masters Games as a player. So this currently is our board structure. We have president, vice president, administrative and treasurer, international affairs, diversity and inclusion, coaching affairs, referee affairs, and francophone affairs. Currently, the secretary position is vacant. We will be looking to fill that position. We are looking again for anybody who is available and wants to do the work, but at the same time, we know we as an organization have work to do in terms of diversity and also inclusion of gender. So we're still looking as well to try to balance our gender role. This organization, as many sports organizations, are heavily male featured and male focused. We want to try and address that concern by seeking out and engaging more females through everything we do. So we approach it with a different intersectional lens that we hope that you guys as leaders in the community will also embrace. For us, as we chart a new way forward, we'll paint the picture of having a more intersectional and more diverse perspective in terms of inclusion for females. So for oversight, here's some lists of some people who have signed up as advisors and elders. We continue to have conversation with them. The goal of an elder is somebody who's been in the community that's respected with more than 25 years of experience, who has, we feel, value to give back to us. As you saw in our statements that we put forth previous, we can see a lot further standing on the shoulders of our elders who've gone before us. So we want to recognize and acknowledge these gentlemen. When we come to the point in time where we have our annual celebration and our award ceremony, we will look to then reward these individuals from our community who have been longstanding. As you can see, some of the names listed here. These people have to acknowledge and accept, obviously, to be a part of the association. There are not all members listed there from our community. We do have the envisionment to have one day every single person that's a part of our community be a part of this, but obviously we know that that's not necessarily truthful or realistic in the sense that, to be homogeneous across our culture, whereby the Black culture makes up over 200 different ethnic groups with different vying opinions and backgrounds and cultures, it's often difficult. But we're open and inclusive enough that we'll continue to include people. So by no means is this a comprehensive list or a final list. It's just what we have today, and we'll continue to move forward. We do have also advisors who will meet with us one-on-one and or meet in an overall once a year group meeting, who will help us and guide us given their expertise and their knowledge in the game. We continue to have people come on and be advisors, and that again is open to individuals if they want to lend their time in that capacity. We will have an actual sign-up process to be an advisor. Currently has been by people being referred forward, and if that's something that others want to refer people in the community to take up that role, we'd be more than happy to continue to build out our list of advisors. Our first advisory meeting will be just before our year end. Our year end will come in August with the Emancipation Day. We started and publicly launched kind of our organization then on purpose. We didn't market anything. So although we are public, so to speak, we're not public in the sense that we've marketed or announced or put out our website and that kind of stuff, because we've been building the foundation. We felt the first year was important. Once we come towards the end of that, we will then start marketing and opening up a lot more to be doing more public presentations and so forth, as well as making sure that we are inclusive of the overall membership and their concerns. We have some special advisors, such as Dr. Elena Simpkins, who wrote her PhD on the intersectionality of Black females in sports, and as to why we do not see Black females more engaged in sport leadership. We have Dr. Zubaida Nazim, who is also a research specialist in racism from Centennial College. Dr. Elena Simpkins works at University of Michigan and also University of Eastern Michigan. We also have Doug Minter, who's a business consultant from Tennessee, and he also is in business affairs, and he allows us to have training for business development and entrepreneurship. That is in a partnership we have with the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, which we'll talk a little bit later. But those are services that we're now bringing to the forefront to help our overall membership be able to find what they need to move forward. We also have Norma Telfor, who's a government person who's in government affairs, that helps us to understand and connect with certain government types of issues in order to be able to navigate and have influence as we move forward in the future. Directors. We had 2 directors meetings thus far to date. We've had our first directors meeting was in October. We had another one most recently. We will be releasing that video to you all. Once again, it's just to prepare the directors for what would happen in terms of the representation of the areas. We still do not have complete national coverage, as we've said. In this list here, we have individually, as a group, spoken to almost every single person except for 1 or 2, which still need to be confirmed, who initially had said that they would be involved, but we're just still confirming that involvement. So we still remain pretty strong, but there's a couple of areas of weakness that we have to do some work in, such as the Atlantic region, the Prairie regions, and also, Quebec. So Patrick Tobo has taken up specifically that task, being somebody's Francophone descent. to make sure that we do have proper representation from Quebec and Montreal to continue our dialogue and building our framework in those areas. So currently, um, uh, we have our biggest need is in the Atlantic region, whereby I've been speaking with Stephen Hart and a couple of our stakeholders that I'm in partnership with other Black community groups to make sure we can find representation in that region. It is really important that we do have representation from coast to coast. That opens us up to be a different kind of organization and also allows us to access different levels of funding. Also, when we're providing solutions, it's a lot easier to differentiate ourselves from other organizations because we are actually coast to coast, and we do have actually boots on the ground in all these regions who can help us direct and look for solutions. So directors, what does a director have to do? And in our meeting, what do we discuss? Here are some points about our directors, but we just highlighted them overall so you can see what those points are. Specifically, advocate and recruit members in their region. It's one thing for a central body to be centralized and to do everything out of that area. We know that that's not the way the solution works for a country as vast as ours. There are needs to be met in each region and or area, and they all have their own generic culture and makeup. We as a national body are here to support the bigger picture of everybody in that perspective. But the whole idea is that we have some directives that the directors will carry out. One of those is to present at least one webinar for the year. So if you're a director, we've got 30 directors. We're expecting content because content is what's important. We know everybody right now is webinared out and they're kind of tired from Zoom meetings. There's all kinds of information on that. So we decided to take a step back and not push that. But we still want to though develop the content because it is important to have that content from our community, but also to have representation. Okay. Also, we announced that we'd be launching a podcast series with myself and Junior Hubert. I should say Hubert. I know as Junior because it's more familial, but Hubert Busby and also Dexter Gilmore. So the three of us will be setting up interview times. We've set up the initial schedule. I also had a conversation with Kwame from Ottawa. He wants to carry the show on his podcast network. There's also a business takeout person I know here in Toronto that does a business networking for the Black community. They want to carry those podcast interview shows on their network as well. And hopefully we'll have those podcasts available on our website. So the whole goal there is to make sure that you all who are in your various areas across the country show representation. We feature and we speak to you. It's important to know what's going on, in other various parts of the country. I'm pretty sure Vancouver doesn't know exactly what's happening in Ottawa. Ottawa doesn't know what's going on in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia doesn't know what's going on in Barrie, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we all do face some of the same challenges. So it's really important for us to come together and present ourselves as a unified body through educational seminars and also through getting to know who we are. That podcast is called Our Story. So basically, it's the idea of each of us in a 15 to 20-minute interviewing each other and speaking about our challenges, our backgrounds, and also our excellence, right? It'll be the director's job to seek out one individual, at least, in a leadership perspective, who's a young adult under 30 to succeed, right? It's really important. We talked about succession planning. And right now, from statistically, Canada stats, there's lots of information have been released in the last couple months around the Black community, and much more is still needed. We're finding that Stats Canada finally did their first study specifically on our community around some of the challenges we face just most recently, but it was around employment. There's also been other studies. I'm also involved right now with the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, and they just did the first study of its kind for Black entrepreneurs, right? And so that also was recently finalized, and that will be put out in the next week or so. We're working on that with the Black Chamber to come up with that presentation. There's also been a report about Black funding. So for any of you guys who don't know about these things I'm mentioning, we will be starting our newsletter, which will have this information in it for you. Currently, I've been communicating these things to those people behind the scenes, such as Canada Soccer, Ontario Soccer, providing them with the information and the research as to what our community faces. As a quick side point, when we look at our community in terms of demographics, overall, the average age of the Canadian population is in the mid 40s. Our average age right now is 26 to 30, if I remember correctly. Again, I can get the stats on that, but that just shows that our overall community is much younger and growing fast in terms of the largest population sector in Canada. So we have to make sure that we as a community and a group are seeking out and finding advantages to help the next generation to not face some of the same challenges that we are facing. We're asking also directors to hold at least 2 meetings a year in their region, one for each half of the year, that will also tie into the greater meetings that we're holding as a national body and also other things going on. So there'll be enough content to go around for all of us to all learn from one another. So we're asking directors to commit to this. It's not an arduous schedule. This is at a minimum, and it's already along the lines of the things that you're looking at and doing. So we're hoping that through these measures of individual development, local representation, advocating for leadership, and seeking young individuals to succeed us will then help us have a proper presence across the country. Okay. Screen's not advancing. Hang on a sec here. There we go. So programming. Okay, our programs are here to educate, engage, connect with members from variable resources, providing opportunities and giving us the ability to grow. Quite often in our imagery, we don't see females. We don't see females from other sports. It's important for us to know that although we are mainly soccer based and we focused on soccer, we've always said that we will look at other sports and other areas of development and growth. So it's important to have this as part of representation in our imagery, and also knowing that it's always going to be part of what we do for other goals we want to look at moving forward. The main area of why we're kind of here, and we're all about coaching, education, development, hence a coaching association. The three main things we've identified in support for coaches are coach mentorship, licensing preparation, and coaching competency. We've looked at the idea of mentorship, identifying and learning who facilitators in our community might be, looking to then manage and develop those facilitators to be able to manage mentors in the region, train those coaches and those mentors as learner coaches. For licensing, help coaches prepare for organizational setup, session planning, delivery support, verbal feedback, and written feedback so they understand what the process is. The more coaches we get through the licensing preparation process, the more coaches hopefully will be successful, the more representation we'll see. Then there's the actual area of competency. It's one thing to get a license. It's another to be mentored. It's another then to be gauged on how good you're actually performing as a coach, right? And that only comes from a subjective perspective. And we know we can often be critical because coaching is a thing of excellence, but the whole idea is to have different opinions and reflections. We know that the methodologies of the past have not necessarily been favorable for us as a community, right? So we want to make sure that we have representation at the table whereby you are getting feedback from observation and coaching in matches and also in practice environments. You are being measured against some sort of observation criteria and also core competencies. You're being given a process and a practice and a way to look at self-reflection. We're looking at source in terms of being scored on a scale of competency for your own personal review. And we want to have quarterly meetings to be able to review how we're doing as a program. For us, there is no progress unless there's struggle, which we know. But the whole goal is not to be constantly in struggle, it's to actually make progress, okay? Our mastermind program. The mastermind program is a development program that brings together a select group of individuals with a common key focus to be able to advise, give you guidance, decision-making, support, creativity, and also accountability. Information sessions are set up once a week. They're developed to engage and help the various participants develop as a business person. They have continued group discussions under master leadership, promoting connectivity and networking to share the ultimate goals for your organization to grow. It's a way to also get one-to-one consulting. The person who's running this program, Doug Minter, is also from the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. We also have formed a Black Advisors Group. I sit in that advisors group as well. There are 12 advisors from Canada and United States, which include managers of hedge funds, people who've done business consulting. Right now, the mastermind program is ongoing. That's something I'll be introducing to those who are so inclined in business, who want to, someone who might want to develop an academy or develop a business or develop a product idea. That support is there. It's more targeted for us specifically around the idea of someone who's owning their own soccer business, an academy, or a program they're running, to get that extra support needed from other Black advisors who've been long in business. Maybe it's some mentoring, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's sales, maybe it's various ideas around governance. It could be structure of your organization. These kinds of things are available to you through this program. I had sent our Vice President Rick Titus through the program initially last year. He went to some initial consultation in terms of looking at that. as a setup. We just piloted that, but now I'm looking back to get the wider audience involved in looking at this program. Our next up player showcase. We had a next up player showcase because we had identified early on through our survey when people registered. I don't know why this slide's here. I must have gotten mixed up. Hang on a quick second. Should be talking about membership here. Okay, sorry about that. Let me switch the slides to membership. There we go. I'll come back to that in a second. So when we had our membership sign up, we had people sign up and also do a survey. It's really important to do a survey and gauge our audience to know who our people are and what their backgrounds are and also what they're looking for in terms of development. From that survey, we found that coach development, player development were the #1 areas. So we went ahead to look at starting a pilot project. I did a mentorship program with Coach Steve Hughes, where I had Coach Steve Hughes come out and I helped him with his National B program that he's going through right now. That's what we saw a minute ago. We saw Coach helping with coach licensing is one of the areas for guidance. Everything we do, we try to do an initial pilot first and then expand it out to the wider audience. We want to make sure we find the pitfalls of what can and cannot work. So from that survey, it also told us that player development was really important for our community. We hence developed that player showcase, which I'll show you bits and parts of that in a second. And then now moving forward, we have a working group to assist in making the change in our associations. So people, we're going to ask you all to join the working groups, such as membership, recruitment, women's affairs. You know, a lot of these things were already listed previously. I won't go back through that. You guys can look at that and sign up for the various areas of interest that you may have. We want, as a membership, for you all to be advocates for change and leaders in your communities so that we're represented as a greater body right across the country. Okay, we're going to seek to provide services and assistance with your careers in sports through player development, which is what we're working on right now, and I'll tell you about it a bit more in a minute. Females to the Forefront, a conference that we're working on in terms of development for Black females and females in general within the sport. Coaching education, as you just saw, increasing coaching competency. Networking and mentorship, referee education, and then advocacy of individual group challenges. Okay. So with that said, I will jump back now to the next up showcase, because that was what we had found from our quarterly report was the very first area we would look at. So within that, we had 6 teams, 6 referees. We had a color commentator calling the games. We had 130 players registered. Players were then able to use that footage for scholarship process. It was really important last year in the midst of the pandemic to be able to conduct a showcase for our community, because we knew that many of these young men who've been working for years towards scholarship were kind of shortchanged with the pandemic. So we took it upon ourselves as a community, and we put together this showcase league, so to speak. And then we know for a fact to this day that 8 players were able to secure scholarships from various teams in the showcase from the direct footage that they were able to have in terms of being updated. The way that this came down, it wasn't something that was only hand selected. It was because the CPL had sent out to all the League One coaches saying, if you have any talent within your community, can you please videotape one game and send that game back to us so we can evaluate and try to look at the next generation of players that may be out there. I took it as a sign to say it would be great for us to come together as a Black community and showcase all the talent that we have. So I wrote back to the governing body and the CPL on that, saying we have a collection of people across our community that are usually not looked at, and would it be okay to provide that service by doing a body of footage, not just one game, a number of games in a safe environment, within our community. And we looked at the teams who were already in League One, such as Pickering, and then we had Athlete Institute, Unionville. The teams are already there. And so we started initially, Masters, a few others. We started initially to have 8 teams, and we whittled it down to 6 because of various conditions. And we were able, it was done in a very short period of time. We were able to go ahead and then have this player showcase come off. The overall quality was very high, and people were really, really happy with the overall end product. There's just some quick stats. We had, ethnicity breakdown of 55% Black, 21% white, 6% multiracial, 3% Arab, so on and so forth. So this is truly a multicultural display, but predominantly with Black kids getting an experience. So I'm just going to show you a video of some of the highlights, some of the goals you'll see from that showcase. So that's just a quick view of that. We will be producing some highlights of the league as we go forward. We are planning to continue to move forward with this process. So what's happened is for this year, as we know that we're now returning back to play, we do plan again to extend that. We do have interest right now from about another 4 or 5 new teams to be added in. So right now we're looking at about 8 to 10 teams in a showcase format. The plan is to look at ongoing showcasing at least 3 times a year in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall, with various entities looking at what a player standard should be at the under 15 and under 17 age group, and then also, from time to time playing against older players who will be at a League One standard. So the whole idea is to help prepare and to look at what a standard is of a player at the ages that are so important, that lead to nationals and lead to international play, that we as a community could then look for the kids and the players in our communities who are not being featured and go from there. We have a standing subcommittee that's been meeting on this for the past couple months. We will now open it up to allow others to come in if they want to be a part of that. We had to just lay the foundation for that player showcase. And we now want to be able to extend that and then have various teams come into that. It is a showcase, but it's kind of structured differently. With COVID going on, we have to start thinking differently and apply design thinking to all we do. So the whole idea is that it's not a league, it's not a tournament, it's a showcase, but it's not really a showcase. It doesn't happen over one weekend. If you look at the value, what we charge for it, and running it across 4 to 6 weeks, the goal is to be able to have a body of evidence for high performance players. Playing 1 game or 2 games here or there, or 3 games in a weekend is not so bad. We know the challenges of playing 3 games in a weekend, and people are starting to move away from that. Now with COVID, the chances of people being able to travel and get out makes it much more difficult. So what we were able to provide in terms of a quality experience for parents and for fans and for players, something that was high quality, good competition, and something that people really like to come out and watch in a safe environment was tantamount. And there was lots of positives and success and feedback, and even parent testimonials that we have that we're now putting together in terms of formulating some pieces of marketing when we're ready to move forward with it again this year. That subcommittee right now is being led by Manny Corona, and he's been documenting some of the initial stuff since last year. So we'll be putting that together and inviting others to come in and join that group as we go forward and look again to do this showcase this year as well. Part of the work in this showcase as well is to contact college coaches in different levels. We've had conversations with TFC about this. We've had conversations with USL coaches. We've had conversations with CPL coaches. I spoke to Pamadou for an hour about this. I spoke to Stephen Hart, and they're both interested in us creating a pipeline or a funnel to be able to send players through this process to them. And the whole advantage of this process is not any one player or one team or one person having to do the work. We do the work collectively. We've also reached out to NCAA coaches. We're now compiling a list of all the Black coaches in Division 1 in the US, Division 2, Division 3. We're working with the coalition we put together now with MLS Players for Change, USL players, as well as with BSMA, Black Soccer Management Group. So right now we have the list ongoing as a research that we're going to put together, not just for ourselves, but for our whole community to know where the Black coaches are and also be able to help them find good talent. If they come to us, it's not just finding one team. So if a player can be referred in from somebody who's not even on one of these teams, we were doing that. We allowed those players to be referred. So for example, one of the coaches came to me and said, I have a really good striker. I said, that's great. Let's bring him in. We brought him into the showcase. He played with one of the teams that I had in the showcase. He scored 4 goals in 4 games. He's now got some highlight tape. He's now shopping that around, and hopefully we'll try and see if we can't land him somewhere. I know one of the kids on my team, younger player, was continuing to use the updated footage, and he just got a scholarship to a Division II school, Wheeling, in West Virginia. He got a 3-quarter scholarship directly from the footage that was used off of this showcase. He was able to showcase himself. And the parents and he are very, very happy and are thankful for us having done this last year overall as a process. Oops, sorry. This is just a quick look at the statistics. So we have a full statistical breakdown. For those that know MSA software, you can see right here on the screen some of the stats it might pull. I won't go into too much depth on that, but it's a really good software that allows you to look at any of the details. So what we had done, which is a bit different, that we're looking to now database and while we're meeting as a player standard, is the whole goal is that week by week in this showcase, we know who the best players are. We will have each coach does a marking on the player of the game. So we know who the MVPs are from each position, forwards, defense, and midfielders. That data, along with some basic data that we're looking at to look at the different players from different positions. It gives us all the stats on that. And then goals and assists are added in. And every week we produce a top 11. If you look at typical leagues of the past, they have said that they're going to be player centric, but they haven't really been player centric. They've been more team and or league centric. Our goal is to be player centric. If you look at college and universities where they have player of the week, athlete of the week, who performed well that week, that's our goal, which is more important than looking at, overall how that team did. So for us, it's really important to be able to show that, to be able to have these players be featured as we go forward. And if we look at the players individually, we can break down all of their stats through this system. For those that haven't seen it before, I will pull up and show you something really quickly. Can you guys see this screen? Hopefully you can see this screen. So this is just pulling up a player, and basically you can click on any part of his game. So let's just say I want to see how many shots he took in a game. I click on shots. It's now going to show me this player has had 14 shots in the game. I can now look at his shots and see how well he did in the game. Okay, a bit too far out, high shot. So now you can go through and pick highlights on the player and see what the player is doing, right? Okay, so this allows us to break down any statistics, right? Passing attack. So if it's an attacking midfielder, I'm looking at stats like penetrating passes into the penalty box from the third. I can look at those kind of stats and pull those things down. The software is now being used by League One, as well as League One Reserve, and anybody who has any showcase tournament, you can look for this software from this company. They're also being used certain parts in the CPL as well. It just allows you to break down. You can go back to the full league and look at, so for us as a showcase, it's good because you can compare a player across that whole league. So if you click on the showcase, and then it has all the different teams, and then I can break stuff down through, let's say, a player statistic. If I want to say who was the best player that had the most aerial duels, I can look for that. Who won the most air challenges? Click on that, and we see this player here had the most air challenges, won the most air challenges. This player here, I can click on it and get his stats now, right? So it allows us to look quickly at statistics and to be able to formulate week by week who was the best player, right? So now we can then market those things in a fashion that features the player, and it's not necessarily about only the league, it's about the players as well. So this is something that we initiated last year and we plan to continue on this year. Referee education. We're still in development of programming to meet the needs of the community for referee education. I know Kizan was supposed to talk a bit about that. I'm not sure if he's here. Kizan, are you here, or are you able to talk about what some of your ideas are, not what we've done just yet, what some of your plans might be for future? Are you able to come on, Kizan, and just give us a quick word on that?
Yes, hi, Paul. Hi, guys. I have a presentation here. Let me see if I can pull it up, and then I can share my screen and we can talk about what I've been working on.
Excellent. So one sec here. Let me just change the sharing over for you and let you see that you're on your computer, hopefully.
I am. I'm home now.
Okay, good. Okay, so you should be able to share and turn on the screen share.
A second.
No worries.
I have a lot of tabs open, so just trying to find the right one.
That's okay. As we go through, just to acknowledge a couple other board members, you will hear from Hubert, and I believe Jennifer should be on the call now. Jennifer, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So when we get to females from the forefront, can I get you to talk to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. Okay. And I had you earlier on in the presentation. I introduced you as our new vice president. Congratulations. But I'll let you talk in a minute.
In a meeting, I was trying to go as quickly as I could. So.
No worries. I didn't want to wait because people were asking that, so I had introduced you earlier, but we'll let you come into that after. Okay, it's all yours, Suzanne.
Can you see my screen?
We did a second ago, but it seems to not be on right now.
Okay, let me go back.
Yes, there you go. You just got to slide the other stuff up. There we go. We can see it now.
Okay, do a slideshow. Okay, so last week I was able to meet with Tony Camacho. As you guys know, Tony's head of officiating in Ontario, and he actually wanted to speak to me, something that I wanted to speak to him about as well. And part of that was how are we going to help grow Black officials within the province and, I mean, to some extent, the country. Because when we look at a lot of those games at the higher level, we don't see representation from within our community. And we said, how can we change that? Because obviously, you know, there's a lot of Black players, as Paul said in that the little mini tournament that he had. You know, there's 55% Black. The coaches we have, but then we don't have the officials on the field. If we go through the registered officials in the province, there's that I know of, there's one regional referee who represents as Black, and then just one provincial, that's myself. And at the national level, I believe there's one Black official who's a referee from Quebec. So part of that is we want to change that. We want to see representation on the sidelines. We want to see representation on the field and on the official side as well. So when we met with Tony, we talked about a few topics. We talked about why are Black players not making the jump to be officials? So trying to get players who may not be able to make it to the next level to jump over on the other side, the bad side, and become an official. If they do make that jump, how can we get them to make it to the next level? So often referees do their entry-level course, and that's it. They do it for maybe a couple of years in their teenage lives, and then that's it. So how can we get them to stay within the game and, you know, make a career out of it? How can we develop Black officials to help with the growth of referees from being a district referee to, you know, to be a regional, from a regional to a provincial, and from a provincial perfectly to become a national referee? Because I think, you know, we have the potential within our community that we can have more Joe Fletchers within our ranks. But part of that needs to have a representation. So going forward, we talked about creating a Zoom session where we're going to have a pool of referees, of Black referees from all over the province and potentially the country who wants to learn. And within this pool of referees, we will have them. We'll talk about different topics. So some of the topics will include, you know, laws of the game, what it takes to get to the next level. Because one of the problems that we ran into was that some of the referees who were given opportunities in the past, they don't do certain things the way that it would be in a normal situation. So, for example, replying to emails. Sometimes you will get maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 hours to respond to an email, and officials won't respond. That opportunity is gone. Sometimes showing up in a timely manner for a game. Some games you're required to show up an hour and a half, some an hour, some 2 hours. Officials would normally show up 15 minutes before games. And that's something that, you know, may be wrong within our community, but how can we change that? Practical refereeing, the preparation for games. How can we make our referees ready for the game from one level to another level? Because as you go up the level, the expectation changes. and you need to be more and more professional as you go. Fitness. This usually isn't a problem within our community at the younger ages, but I think as we get older, sometimes, players start losing their fitness, so referees start losing their fitness as well. So I don't think it should be an issue in our community, but however, it's something that we talked about addressing. Match control, controlling the match so that they can get out of the match with 22 players and, deal with coaches who might be a little hostile or, offensive from time to time. Mentorship. Often a lot of our players and referees hate being assessed, because when you assess, it's a pass or fail. So we said, instead of going the route where they're being assessed and they have to pay for this financially, why not have a mentorship program where, they have a coach, a mentorship or mentor or a coach, so that they can see, hey, I did this well, but these are areas of improvement, rather than always an official assessment that goes on your Ontario soccer record, and people can see for years to come, okay, so Kizan did this well, but he didn't do that well. Whereas if you have a coach is going to help you grow into being a professional. So here's the good things that you did, here's the things that you need to improve on. Next game, this is what I want you to do. So within these Zoom sessions, we talked about having education from Ontario soccer instructors, and these could be any instruction from a district instructor, provincial, or even national instructors within this pool of referees. Talk about willing to give more Black officials opportunities in the OSL, and not just the OSL MJ division, because I think that's might as well be doing men's league. We want opportunities that's gonna help us get to the next level or give us a challenge. We talked about the Premier Division, OCAA, OUA, and League One. And we talked also about maybe using one of the Ontario Cup tournaments where it can be all Black officials, and then there we can get them for a few days, and we can mentor them and coach them so that these officials can potentially get to the next level. So that's kind of what I have in the works for Ontario soccer. So that's kind of my presentation, Paul. I'm not sure if you have any other questions. So within the next little bit, what I'm asking from the panel here is, if you have any or know of any Black officials who is looking for an opportunity, please get in touch with me, because I would love to have him or her join us, because I think we're lacking right now, and we can use as much help we can within our community. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Can you stop your screen share? Okay, excellent. Thank you, Kizan. So moving along, one sec here. Okay, oops, go back one. Okay, females to the forefront. So I'll get Jen to come on and talk about that. Jen, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, all yours.
Okay. I have some stuff I want to share too.
Sure.
That's possible.
Do you want to start with this one, or do you want me to go straight to your sharing?
Yeah. Well, it's some if it is going to be females to the forefront too. So,
okay. So I'll just stop the sharing and I'll let you take it over. Hang on a second. So you should be able to share. Go ahead with yours right now.
Okay. Let me just.
Okay.
Well, hi everybody, or gents, because I think I'm probably the only female on the call, which is something that obviously is we're very aware of, and it's not only just females in general, but it's also youth. So, and that means youth of all genders. So, although it says females to the front, the way that we have taken this on is to make sure it's inclusive for everybody to be involved. Like for more females to be involved, you need everybody. So that is the concept. This is how everything has been organized. People, although it's majority racialized females, but there are males that are going to be a part of it in regards to some of the things that are being presented, as well as many people from all walks of life and ages, because there needs to be, of course, the new group of the younger people. We need to find a way to get them more involved, because again, I guess that's part of the succession planning, but it's also will help us creating the right kind of pieces too. So we need that kind of feedback from them. So this is just giving you the overall idea of what the conference looks like. So and this is how some of the pieces, how we develop our sponsorship pieces, but you can see that we have like the like pre-conference work that we're doing, the stuff that we'll do within the conference, like special little sections where people will be able to have conversation, and our membership, a big part of us being a success is the membership has to be a part of it. And regardless of how you play in this game, we, as Keyson had said, like they're having problems just getting referees, but they have maybe only one black male referee that he was mentioning at that one point in the higher level of the game. There's absolutely hardly any females referees. And when the game right now in Ontario, who has the largest membership of soccer players in Canada, the player level is about almost half and half. It's pretty close in regards to that, but within that they don't know how many although those people are actually racialized, right? So as we're starting to go and trying to figure out numbers, we're also looking for ways to that gap for when people stop playing, which happens pretty early, how we can still keep them involved in the game in a capacity that they want to be involved in the game. So we're using a program called Hopin for the Females to the Forefront event. Now, it's a pretty high-end piece, but we thought that was really going to be important for what we want to do. So Hopin, when you go actually online, it's like going to a conference hall. Like, they have like that opening part, the hallway, and then they have the main stage. You have places to have, your breakouts. There's going to be a place for an expo with, organizations presenting some of their offerings, as well as private meeting rooms for, like, we have a place for all our keynotes and our panelists. They can go and chat or organize people who are going to be part of our group to help put this out. We'll have a space for them. And this is all online, of course. And these are all, and I'd like to do a membership one. So our membership can have a private little area too, group that they can talk about things that they're seeing, or maybe they want to chat about that kind of thing. I think that's going to be important because we'll need feedback for this. So, and that will help us. Like I said, that's a big part of our, like, we're going to have VIPs. We're going to have people that we have. I do strategic stuff too for the organization. So there's people that we want to engage with, but maybe right now is not the time, but being able to invite them to an event like this, that's going to be really big. To see what we're doing is going to be important for them to experience what we're trying to do here. And so this kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the conference and how much thought has been thought about. But in regards to it, even like lots of pieces in regards to post-conference with Hopin, each piece is going to be videotaped, and we're going to use that as educational tools for what was done at the conference, as well as hopefully getting more members is part of it too. And it's open for anybody who wants to be involved and learn more, because it's not just about female or equity, or it is a lot about it's Black people pretty much that are putting it on, or racialized people that are putting it on, and it's all um, mainly female. So I'd say probably about 90% female. But it's about how we can make sustainable change. And sport has been used as a tool to do all sorts of things, and especially soccer. Soccer actually has the longest history of colonialism, and it also has the longest history of resistance towards colonialism. So these are all things with the conference. We're using the first day as a bit of an educational part, of how we got here, and the next day is like more ideas and solutions or things that people are doing, and then trying to leave off on a positive note um, of thinking out loud and having some meaningful conversation, because it's no one's doing it right, because this stuff has been going on for a really long time. So obviously something needs to change, and whether we're using some pieces with some academics and working with them in regards to how we can do meaningful organizational change and stuff that's already been studied, and so that we can, as an organization, even how we're set up, will have some. I think Paul mentioned new design thinking. Now, the new design thinking versus old design thinking. Old design thinking is you look at whatever the problem is and you just focus, like hyper focus, like with a horse with blinders, on just that piece, and you don't think about a whole picture and the effects of what's being done. And new design thinking shows that, like that's why we're kind of in the problems with systemic issues now, right? So how do we go and we change that? So I'm working with a lot of academics in parts of building some of that out, and I'll give you just a sample of a piece that we've been working starting to exist already in regards to that. But it's just we had to understand the culture and where the power is, and intersectionality happens to be one of the pieces that we're talking about, and then breaking down like what has to change within industry and sport itself, and why having the whys of it's causing an issue for people not getting the opportunity, as well as the resistance that comes with it, and then where the legitimate power is right now. Once we start talking openly about some of that, then we can start really getting into how we can make long-term sustainable change in regards to that.
And try to cut you. The screen is still the mind map. I don't know if you said you might.
Okay, sorry. Let me just stop the share and
you're saying you're another piece. So
yeah. Sorry, I'll bring it up. Sorry, I apologize.
I know people wouldn't
forget
what
sometimes.
talking about. There you go. I know you're talking about, but I know they don't know. There you go.
I guess I should have asked if everybody could see it. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not on a roll. But this sort of is like an example of some of the things that we're working on, and some pieces that are already out there and have like the study in behind it. So I'm working with those experts and how we can make those changes, and then do some actual sustainable long-term change within the sport, as well as industry. Again, like sport, as we know, is just a mirror of what's going on outside, right? So the idea is that instead of right now, in regards to identity, for those who don't know much about intersectionality, the idea is that as a human being, we all have various identities that make us up as an individual, right? And then how that works with our decision making, and then how does our organization then with all of these different identities, or people with all these different identities, how are we making those decisions within that organization, and you know, on and on and on, right? So this is like not a quick thing, so but we're starting to explore some of that within our symposium that's coming up, and having some conversations, so you'll meet and be able to hear some of the academics that are doing a lot of the work in regards to this. And it's an opportunity for us to start talking and having some real meaningful conversation in a safe space, knowing that, you know, we all identify in a bunch of different ways. Even in developing this organization, you know, we had a lot of people who were concerned within the organization with using the word Black, right? And I get that. My family's very mixed, from the Caribbean and from Trinidad, and so a lot of people in my family don't necessarily identify like that, right? And are we being, you know, and then people were feeling, I think, disloyal to their other identities that make them up. And this is all a place to have these kind of conversations, to have that kind of freedom to start building things and keeping ourselves inclusive and being more truly inclusive. A lot of things are said to be inclusive and they're not really, and talking about what that actually means, and defining it, and maybe that means bringing in new language. So those are all things that I'm working on, but that conference is a piece towards that. So I don't want the I don't like a lot of labels, because labels give limitations, and we don't. That's the problem, is that they silo everybody, and that's how oppression works. Oppression wants to keep people divided, where everybody who is, you know, we have all these identities, like, what, you know, like, I'm female and I'm of color, but I have a bunch of different cultures within me, as well as, you know, like being usually like the only female, usually, you know, and but I've also have a lot of experience with a bunch of sports. Like, I have a lot of different things that make me up. These are all my identities, and we all have that. So it's about understanding that as individuals, respecting everybody, having a little bit of compassion to where everybody's coming from. I can't tell somebody what the Black experience is. And the male like Black experience in Toronto is going to be different than the male experience in Halifax.
Yep.
Right? And understanding that, and they all deserve the respect. So building safer spaces to have those kind of conversations, and know that we're all going to learn, and we're learning as we go along, and language is going to change, and it's better for us to be captaining that ship than, you know, being a passenger, where we've been like the passengers for a really long time. So I know that was a really long you know, maybe at times convoluted explanation, but they all feed each other. Everything that we're doing is feeding each other. And as everything is set up now, how do I get more females involved? Right? And we're working against things that have been going on for a long time. Getting Black females involved has always been a challenge, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a long-term piece, and that's what Females to the Forefront is. But we're also adding the youth aspect of it. So maybe women of my tender age, but we're talking about like the younger ones that will come in. They have new ideas, a different way of looking at things, especially the youth market. So I would love to see more youth helping with like some of our committees and that sort of thing, because their experience and their view of stuff is very different than ours. I'm a first generation Canadian, so that is part of my identity. And for me, my parents didn't get where I was coming from. They grew up in the Caribbean where everybody was of color, so it was a different issue for them. They didn't see some of it till they came here, right? And then my experience growing up here was still different to what their experience was. So these are the, like I said, safe spaces, more conversation, opening to develop things and think about things in a different way. And that's going to take all of us to voice, to voice that. I can't talk on, like I said, on behalf of everybody. Everybody has to represent themselves, but they have to feel comfortable. So that's what females to the forefront really is. And a big part of it is going to be dealing with some of the trauma around it. And we have it is traumatic being a person of color in Canada. So we're going to uh, I'll be working long term with a physio, someone who uh, I was not a physio, I was going to say physio, psychotherapist who specializes in trauma, who's of color, who I'm bringing in to help us with a lot of these pieces. And hopefully we can build that into some of the coaching and refereeing pieces too. So we can maybe do some healing. And that's part of what will, I think, help bring more women and youth when they see that we're trying to do things different than the norm. So
Stuff.
I'll
Yeah,
stop.
I put in the chat a piece that we actually use as a tenure we teach on intersectionality. It's called "The Danger of a Single Story" by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's got like over 10 million views. It's a great piece on intersectionality and identity. I would just recommend you all watch it when you have some time. Copy down the link. Again, we can send it out after, but it's just definitely something really worthwhile looking at in terms of having a different perspective around identity and what it means to understand the perspective. For me, it was kind of interesting, even in teaching. I'll just say quickly as an aside, I was presenting an article to the class, and it was interesting. It was on a Somali young Black girl who had moved to Toronto, and she said the first time she moved to Toronto, she'd been called Black. She didn't know what that was. She didn't know what it meant to be a Black person because her experience from Somalia didn't equate or even generate coming to Canada and then being amalgamated into this homogeneous ideology of what it means to be Black in Canada, right? So it's really interesting to have these perspectives and for us to be a little bit more educated because we know that Canada is a multicultural country and we're going to see a lot more waves of immigration. Most of us, by and large, are from a West Indian, Caribbean descent background because, again, that was not by accident. That was done by the policies and governance and, creation of certain migration patterns in Canada during the 60s and 70s and into, the early part of the 80s, but mainly the 70s. That's why most of us are here because our parents took advantage of that. Even our parents who came into certain jobs specifically only, right? So we see those changes. Now we're seeing the wave change towards immigrant status. We're seeing now is Filipino, Southeast Asian and Chinese. That's the numbers we're seeing in the communities, and they're settling in certain communities as well. So by and large, the Black communities that are coming are from Africa now and from specific places in Africa, specifically Nigeria and Ethiopia and Somali. We're seeing a lot of numbers come in when we look at StatsCan numbers, right? But anyways, I just wanted you to understand a bit of the background. Everything we're doing is informed by academics. So we're not just coming and saying this is the way because it's my idea or Jen's idea or Hubert's idea or Lucky's idea or anybody's specific idea. We're actually looking at the research as well to inform our decisions. And we're actually consulting with these educators who are writing and documenting solutions. That's the way forward. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we have to listen to the academics who are already out there who have taken the years of study and research to be able to provide us with ways forward, as well as with our own personal lived experiences, right? So this is just the three main doctors we have coming up in the conference. We have a lot of other speakers that we're still putting in place around them. We can't say all the names just yet because we're still working out on some of the individuals who would come on board, but some really dynamic, exciting people we're looking to have come to the front, as well as even younger females. That's one big area of focus for us. One of our topics is young, gifted, and Black, and looking at young Black females from different areas, talking about their experiences. I just got off the phone yesterday with one of those players who's actually got a full scholarship to an NAIA school, and she's starting in the game because their starting goalie is injured and she's having a lot of anxiety. So the father called me and said, "Can you please talk to her? You always have a way of calming her and getting her prepared for the big game. So can you talk to her?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I talked to her for half an hour. I have to find out how she did in her game today because they're playing against one of the top ranked teams in the whole country, and she's a bit nervous and scared in that, but she's a really bright, brilliant girl. She's a valedictorian. She's a 90-something athlete. We want to hear from this next generation coming up as to the experiences that they have. So that's kind of what the work we're all doing, engaging the next generation. And we just invite you guys to join us in this kind of work. Next up is just going to be where we're at now with some of the work we've been doing with the government bodies in terms of specific roles. So, and again, I just give you a history of this kind of stuff so you guys can understand. So when we ask about decision making and making changes to advocacy and policy, I had documented this last year and said that we should have as many Black people as possible on the Ontario Soccer Advisory Subcommittee. And we had, again, splintering different opinions in our community. And that's fine. We're okay to have that. Some people said, there's no way it's going to make any change. Why bother? There are those who said, well, if we go on, yeah, we might make some change. There are those who say, I want to go on to see what's happening. We get all kinds because, again, we're not a homogeneous community. The point being is that if we're not even at the table, we can't make the change. So I really advocated for us to be at the table. And 3 or 4 of us took up the charge from this group specifically. Myself, Colette, and Shane Selvin Lamy were all on the committee. And we were able to at least have a voice on that committee. The committee was initially struck. So many people wanted to come on, and they ended up taking over 40 different individuals to the committee. From that, the committee started meeting monthly, and then they were broken down into some subsections. Those subsections were then tasked with certain areas. I was put into the governance. I just seem to always get governance and policy, that group. Right off the bat in the first meeting, I made my voice heard and advocated. The chair of the committee was David Miller, who's a former mayor of Toronto. Although he's a great person, great leadership skills, great ability, knowledge, everything like that, I indicated immediately in my initial opening speech that to me it was another white savior complex. And we weren't here for another white savior complex. We wanted true representation. And I felt strongly and advocated that strongly, along with the research that I had behind me as to why we don't want that as a position. We want to have racialized representation. They listened to that. And I said even further that the racialized representation should be a male and a female, ideally. They gave us that in. We have Leroy, who's a referee from North York Scarborough, as one of the vice chairs, and then also our director of diversity, Colette. She's also the second vice chair. So they acquiesced and listened by putting 2 Black people in charge of the committee. And the person they asked to write the first document in terms of the structure and present to the group how we would go forward was another Black woman as well too. So at least from a perspective of non-participation and non-inclusion, they're listening. We have to take advantage of that as much as possible. So from that, now we met in the 6 subgroups over the last 3 months and provided a proposal for change to overseas governance. Part of that, the group I was on, we suggested specifically changing their whole diversity policy, which was just accepted. And there was a lot of discussion back and forth as to whether or not we should even submit that policy, which would have some things such as inclusion numbers for districts and for clubs and for representation numbers. Now, we know we're not going to get there right away, but we did a lot of really good work, all of us across the various committees. And what they said at the end of that meeting was they weren't sure how they present this to the board. And we're like, well, you weren't sure. You tasked us to do the work. The work is done. We present it, whether they like it or not. The work has to get presented. So they kind of agreed to that. We'll have one more meeting with our subgroup because our group is mainly the policy group to go over and refine some of the last points to see what we'll present. But in that came an opportunity. Now, it's again, differing opinions. Some people have thought that I spoke to from the committee who, again, racialized Black people, said this is ridiculous because, again, the opportunity was presented last minute. We had basically 2 or 3 hours. They sent an email saying, could somebody from the committee step forward and now present, on behalf of Ontario Soccer, they're doing an e-learning series with Return to Play. And so I immediately put my name forward and they granted and accepted, and it allowed me to give me the topic to present as part of the e-learning series. It'll be fostering diversity and combating racism in soccer. I'll be the main presenter with that presentation as part of the e-learning series that will come on April the 29th, right after our conference. So it'll give us a good chance to be able to talk about what we're doing in terms of diversity, and then also be the representative that now speaks to the whole province, parents, coaches, executive directors. I'll be the voice that is able to convey the message, and they're giving me carte blanche to create whatever content I want to be able to bring that forward. So that's another positive step. At the end of the day, if you don't like something, you got to change it. If you can't change it, then change your attitude towards it, right? Maya Angelou. That was the attitude that was taken with this diversity committee. And that's just a first very small step. We don't know what will come of it, but we have to be positive in terms of our conversations and how we move forward. So that's basically what's happening with Ontario Soccer from that perspective around diversity. And we're also asking to look at things differently as we go forward, as Jen had mentioned, from a design thinking perspective, not looking at things the same way. Now, we know that Ontario Soccer financially is in a lot of trouble. We know they don't have money to pay for a lot of things. Obviously, they're paying for this e-course learning, but I have volunteered my time because I want that message to get out there. It's just an introduction. It gives us a chance as well for our association to be seen or known as providing some information in that area, and then for us to take that and use that to be able to have the conversations that we know are necessary from our community's perspective around diversity, inclusion, and specifically anti-Black racism, not just racism in general, but anti-Black racism specifically as part of the overall paradigm. Canada Soccer. When I first made the decision to run for Canada Soccer, I approached a number of people from my community to back me in terms of putting forth recommendation, and I got a lot of negativity again and didn't get that backing. I went to members of the white community to make sure that I get the backing. I went to the director of League One. I went to the president of Windsor TFC. I went to the president of Wexford and also Ontario Soccer League Management, and got them all to back me and told them that this has to be done. And so they did. They backed me, and I was successful, make a long story short, in my bid to get on Canada Soccer's board, right? So I'm now on the board as the first person elected as a director. Charmaine Crooks was there before. I'm not sure if she was appointed or elected, but as an independent. She's been there for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. And most recently, when Nick stepped down as the vice president, and then obviously he won because he's the president, they left a void in the spot of vice president. Charmaine was now nominated for that position and was selected by the board. She has to go forth in front of the election, in front of the larger members, which comes up at the next AGM in May. But we're hopeful that she will, be able to acquire that position. From that now, her independent position is left vacant. And I thought it was really important to make sure we have another Black female in terms of representation on Canada Soccer Board. So I didn't put it out far and wide. I put it out specifically to the Black community and to Black community female representation in sports. I found a lawyer who ticks all the boxes, that comes across very highly touted. Her name is Dahlia Bateman, and she put in her application for the board, on Friday. And we're just praying, hopefully, that she actually wins that spot and is able to get that next position taken up. My personal goal, and also goals of the community, is to see true representation. I think there's 13 or 15 members that Canada Soccer has on this board. Wouldn't it be great to see 5 to 6 Black members in the next 3 to 5 years on that board, that we actually see representation and change, and also include Black females as well as white females, as well as ableism as well too. So we're going in a direction of looking at making change, and this is where the change has to be made. So when policies come back up, then we can actually look at making the changes that are necessary towards our community. I also had a meeting with Jason DeVos as the technical director of Canada Soccer. That meeting started long before I even had meetings got on the board for a director. So I flatly told him I do understand there might be the looking of the situation of a conflict of interest because I'm on the board and you can't deal directly with staff members, but I came in the capacity not as a board member, as a representative of the Black community before that anyways, and I had initial conversations. We had 2 conversations prior to that before even I got on the board. So at least we're continuing the conversation from there. What I had proposed to him is an actual national coaching program of existing players targeting high performance. We're going to have another follow-up conversation in March to see where it goes, if it can be documented and put forth. That's what I want to see now. We've had enough conversation whereby we will look to include, I can just tell you high level, look to include players who are graduating out of the game at a League One or pro level to be able to get coaching licensing and also have representation from our community. It's one thing which they come with all the time to say, well, yeah, Paul, just give us a list of the 3 Black coaches, we'll include them. I said, absolutely not. I can give you a list of 10 Black coaches right now, if I call their names, that I know of who are trained as coach facilitators, who have coach facilitation background, and there's probably a lot more I'm missing. If I was to get on the phone for one day and call those members of the Black community that I know and put together a coaching education program, it would far outshine anything Canada Soccer has ever done in its history in coaching education in terms of experience, knowledge, background, acumen, playing level, right? Voices, being able to see the community, and others would come along because they would say they find value in that. So although it sounds offensive, it's not, it's such a truth in terms of what we have to look at, because we as a community have value to offer in our experiences, because we have succeeded, many of us, not because of, in spite of, right? So if I know, and I can say right now off the top of my head, I know documented and licensed 8 to 10 coach facilitators, and I asked them how often they've been used by either Canada Soccer or Ontario Soccer. I'm pretty sure I can count it on one hand how many times they've been used. And that's something that has to change. And it's not going to change by just saying, okay, give us the name of 3 or 4 guys to be used. It has to be done from the perspective that we're involved in the process. We're involved in the selection process of coaches coming in. We have to have some skin in the game ourselves in terms of advocating for. And I believe that it should be provided at a discounted price. Now, we know that money drives everything. At the end of the day, they don't run these courses to make a lot of money. But back to the point I said earlier, if we are a national organization and we're providing a service to our community by engaging the next set of young men who are 25 to 35, putting them through coaching education, what would that do if we put in place? And then I went to Black funders in the community and said, listen, this is what we're doing from a national perspective, engaging in every single community across this country that we have people represented in. We are now engaging in turning coaches. This is not about getting coaches from, one place only. They just did a program for League One whereby they offered a really good program for females, and they are allowing a number of females to get into the coaching education pathway to get a C license who play at the League One level. But what happens is our community will complain and say, well, what about us? Why is there not something being done there? I'm not going to take the complaint route. I'm going to say, well, here's the proposal. Here's what we want to do. Now go look at it and chew on it. And that's where we're at now. We need a proposal that would say 3 to 5. This is what I discussed. 3 to 5 Black players from each club, because they just did it as well with the National B license for League One. And I made sure to have one of my coaches, a Black coach at the club that I was at, Pickering, go through that process. There was 2 put through, actually. One I did and one the club they decided. So now we've got another 2 more Black coaches who got a National B license that they didn't even pay for because it was supported by that process. Of course, there's a cost in that. I'm not afraid of saying we can't shoulder some of the cost by going to our community for funding and lowering the cost of that. But I'm not going to do that if it's exclusionary. We have to be included at the table in the decision-making process to provide the actual coach facilitators, to also provide the content that will be on the course. So they did agree to that in principle, and we're going to have another follow-up meeting to see from a documentation standpoint, if it's possible and what's plausible around that. But again, just imagine this. For thinking pie in the sky and vision, we're looking at all high-performance leagues. That's, League One, that's PLSQ, that's maybe the BC Premier League. That's anybody else identified. Maybe it's the academies. It could be the MLS academies across the country. It could be the CPL academies. If each one of those put through 5 coaches, that's partially paid for. What would that do to the amount of Black coaches we would generate inside of 1 month? We could generate close to over 100 Black coaches for the next generation like that, right? Really simply. And have proper representation from us. But it takes work. This is not from yesterday. This is from months and months of discussion and work moving stuff forward. So the goal is to make that part of the process. I'm in a precarious position because I can look at that and propose that from a SWOT analysis. Moving on to the next point. Before I move on to the next point, I also mentioned that in that process where they put together that program, I said, how many Black females were brought into that coaching education program that you had? He stopped, he thought, he said, oh yeah, not one. So here we go once again. It's the same solutions being applied. When they apply these programs, there's not any Black representation. If you look at Canada Soccer, from the board members to staff, to senior staff, to that's in the office, to national staff as well, coaching, there are 3 to 4 Black people. That's it. Myself, Robin, Shane as a contracted coach, and Charmaine Crooks. That's it. That's actually ridiculous. That cannot continue. Canada also has this policy right now called 50-30, whereby it's no longer going to be even acceptable any longer to not have representation, right? It's called the 50-30 challenge. Let me pull it up for you guys. One quick sec here. Can you guys see this? Hopefully you can see this. This is the Canada government starting this not as a mandate, but a suggested, right? And what it means for us is 30% racialization, right? They're talking about everybody. We all get thrown into this category: visible minorities, LGBTQ, all that other stuff, First Nations, Inuit, Métis. But we know what our numbers are, what it means for us. This is what the norm is going to have to be in the future. 50% female, which they're far off of, 30% racialization. Further to that, inside of that, I'm saying 5% Black specifically, because we know right now, the last census in 2016, the Black community makes up 3.5% of the population of Canada. We're now trending towards the next census, which is in May of this year, towards 4.5%. And in heavier concentrated markets such as Toronto and Ontario, we know that we're trending at near 10%, right? And if we go one step further, we know that in Ontario and Quebec, Black people are highly centralized. So within those areas, we should see a higher concentration. That's just straight from a population demographic perspective. If we look at a participation perspective, meaning how many of us are actually playing the sport, in general, we're seeing close to 30 to 50% Black representation in terms of playing the sport now. So if we're looking at actual numbers of who's playing the sport, that's what we should also see. So we have a lot of work to be done, but it's got to start somewhere. We have to make ourselves available, right? All great achievements require time, takes time, as Maya Angelou says, another statement here. But for me, when I came on the board and I was asked, each independent director, or sorry, each director has an area of specialty. What would you like to work on? I immediately said, I want to work on a SWOT analysis, as they're talking about SWOT analysis from each area, one for marketing, one for representation, one for this, one for that. I said, I want to do anti-Black racism. So I was granted the ability by the president and by the board to do a SWOT analysis on anti-Black racism, where I interview the staff of Canada Soccer. I have one more interview to go, where I report on the strengths to date. Yes, there are some opportunities, weaknesses, and threats, and a way forward. And then I'm going to be making recommendations at the board level. Then the board has to buy into it, vote on it, see if they'll move forward on what the recommendations may be. And then from there, see if we can implement some things to make change. So it's the start, right? We also see in terms of behavior and language being changed. I've sent off to them lots of documented information in terms of the emails I've communicated with research behind everything I'm saying. Because again, when we look at the Black community in terms of representation, in terms of access, in terms of funding, it's minuscule. Another study just came out how Black people are not funded at all whatsoever. For those of you that follow my Facebook, you see a lot of these studies and things that I comment on and I post about. The Black community is funded at 0.07% out of all the funds and funding and philanthropy and availability of money going out there for us to do these things, because it's part of society, right? We get 0.07%. That's just ridiculous, right? And that's the challenge we face, because continually we don't get access to funds. So that is what has to change. And it has to change by attitudes. And we see the attitude changing by Canada Soccer for Black History Month and the Hall of Fame having initial recognition of the past and the present in terms of the players. So this is some work that's being done. It's going to take a lot of time, but by having more diverse voices at the table and by us doing the work together, can we start to bring about some of these changes, right? So at this point in time, there's one more slide I have. I want to turn it over to Hubert, who's also on the board, and then I'll talk about some partnerships as well that I've been working on. I just want to allow Hubert a chance to speak. Hubert, are you there? Not sure if he's still there or not. Hubert, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, just to give you a quick second to address the group in terms of from your perspective, some things that you might want to talk about.
Yeah, obviously, good afternoon, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Great to get everybody finally together again and continue this this sort of, big push and in terms of what we're looking to do within our community. So I think it's great that we're coming together at the right time. Currently, my role is to kind of connect some of these dots. There's a lot of crossover within Canada. Obviously, I'm based now in the States, kind of working within CONCACAF in the Caribbean with Jamaica. But obviously, there's a lot of other coaches with Canadian roots kind of doing the same thing and just trying to, above one of the things that we have to kind of take into consideration is that we can't do this in isolation, and there's strength in numbers and the power in numbers. And the more that we can kind of unite our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, obviously, in Europe and more predominantly the UK, the better. So we're trying to obviously get some people in, and then the struggle is everywhere. And I think, for us to be in isolation is not going to push the narrative the way that we should. And but then also just kind of find out what other people are doing as well, that we can share best practices, which is obviously vitally important when we're doing something like this. So, my role in that is to try to, and I think you guys see, when I get some articles or things come through more so internationally, just to kind of share them with the group as well, to say that, hey, some of the things that are happening, as we know, are not just happening over there, but they're also being discussed in lieu of trying to make change. So yeah, I obviously tremendous respect for everybody on here, and like I said, some fantastic people involved, and your support in our unity is going to be very, very important. There's obviously that quote there with Maya Angelou, and yeah, everything, great, as to paraphrase, it takes time, and I think sometimes we're all too, part of our human nature is we want quick results and we want instant results. And similar to coaching and development, it's a long haul. To really have change requires that we do the work, and the work that we're doing now. It might not benefit any of us directly, but it will for sure benefit that next generation that we're fighting for. And I think we just can't lose sight of that, because I think that's really the most important thing right now, is that we continue to work in the notion that those who came before us laid a foundation. We've picked up that mantle, and now we're going to make sure that we leave it better than we currently have it as well right now. So yeah, I mean, that's basically where I'm at. And at any time, I think it's important as well is that we continue to resource. And if you guys need me for anything or want to reach out personally for anything, any sort of support or coaching ed or to bounce anything off of, let's do that. Let's continue to utilize each other, because as Paul alluded to earlier, I mean, we've got a lot of tremendous people on this, in this coaching, association. So let's continue to utilize and share best practices and resources with each other. All right.
Thank you. And it's perfect timing. It takes us into potential. Again, nothing here is 100% formalized because we haven't really come out publicly and to make public statements and sign press releases. So again, I share this with you because, this is, although public, it's we're all in membership together. I'm going to share with you conversations I've had with kind of each of these groups as well too. So we've spoken with the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, and they're doing a lot of work right now in terms of advocacy. They're the ones who asked for $260 million from the federal government and pushed for that grant to then come back down and or recognition to the Black community. So I'm also a vice president of one of their regions as a director, and also working closely with the board. I was on the board previously, but stepped down due to various reasons, too much for me to take on at this point in time. I also had a number of talks with the Black Opportunity Fund. The Black Opportunity Fund is a new hedge fund that's been put together with a number of various stakeholders from the Black community. Surprisingly, there are 3 people who are kind of on the board or decision makers that I kind of know for a long time. I've worked with another not-for-profit and or grew up with knowing. So I had a meeting last week with them. He wanted to get back to me, and he said that we are one of the forefront groups that they know of and are watching. They haven't gotten any funds just yet, but they are quite aware of what we're planning to do in our programming and how we want to apply stuff. So he said once stuff is ready, we'll be one of the first to know or first in the door. There's a couple of organizations they've identified, and we are definitely one of them to be looked at for assistance. So hopefully, through time and through continued relationship, it's important though that we have programs to run. Because if we're not running programs, and it's not up to us only the executive board to be running or doing the programs, it's up to all of us to be able to make sure we have programs. Sports really works is interesting because I had the same conversation prior, and then we had the same conversation at the board level with Canada Soccer. Sports works in terms of the revenue generation, basically mainly in three revenues. There's other ways, but mainly it's 3 ways. It's the membership fees that people pay directly to you. It's the programs that you run, and it's the events that you hold, right? The events is the biggest opportunity to make the most money. Programs obviously can make some from not as much, and membership even less, right? So for us, we want to be able to hold events, hence why we're doing also the Females to the Forefront, and why we're doing also the player showcase next up, because eventually the goal would be to do our own convention and maybe grow as big as the United Soccer Coaches Convention for Black coaches all across North America, which was initially one of the visions I had around Caribana that time, because naturally people come into the city already, and it's not hard to draw them away from the other activities. Nothing is being done in Caribana Sunday right now, and I had planned that years ago, and I did it as a test market where I did a FET match, we call it, whereby I held a game with the All-Stars from the Caribbean or African and Black All-Stars, I called it, versus the Latino All-Stars. I brought in York Jets and the Latino kids. That was the team that had won Ontario Cup. And I invited all the kids across the city that I knew to come and play for free, paid for all, but we had the same thing we did in the Next Up Showcase. That's color commentary. So we had an actual, young student from the college that I usually work with sometimes to come and do the commentary, giving you, play-by-play on the game. And then we also had, the scores being announced. We had starting lineup announced. We had national anthem. We had music. We had the guys with the food truck, guys drinking out back, our typical community, how we experience football to be a true festival of the community. So that's something we're looking at again this year, that if things, all being, told again, COVID and spacing and all these other things, people will still want to get out and do stuff. So we're planning right now to have an event be kicked off for Canada Day as a celebration for this Next Up Showcase League, and then some sort of celebration which ties into our AGM and some sort of coaching education and seminar, or hopefully by then convention for Caravana weekend, August 1st, which is really in emancipation, right? That's what it is. It's not Caravana as we know it. For me, it's more emancipation, right? So anyways, those are some of the things we had talked about in terms of funding and going towards that. SCORE is the soccer collective on race and equity. That's a group in the States of a bunch of ex-pros out of US soccer, guys who played in MLS or played for the national team have come together. Their website just went up. I've been talking to them ongoing from since the beginning with one of their main directors. They also now produced a job board that has soccer jobs that they send to me, and I forward on to you guys through our chat. Once we get up and going, we'll formalize that. And the goal is to continue to work with them to see as a collective voice. They've made a number of demands of MLS. I've been talking at the table, them with the Black Players for Change. So we all got together, Black Players for Change, SCORE, Black Players Alliance USL, Black Soccer Management, and myself. The Black Advocacy Group from the United Soccer Coaches was not on the call, but we're supposed to be meeting once a month. I have to find out what happened to our meeting. It was supposed to be, I think, this week or next week, but we're meeting once a month to discuss across the board challenges and changes of how we can bring about, a collective voice on the things we want to see. So there's a working document that we're all working on together and documenting and jotting down representation. Where are all the Black coaches of these different leagues, and what are some of the things we want to see changed? To that level, I also spoke with the Professional Footballers Association, which is the new union that's been formed in Canada for the players inside the CPL. And so I spoke with their representatives, and what I had asked them is I want to be included. Once we do it as a model there, I'm going to try to extend the model back over to USL players and also for Black Players for Change. The goal will be, again, for it to be written into their collective agreement contract that each of these pro teams must put through 3 to 5 Black coaches every year. That's nothing. When you look at a national C or B license of $2,000 by 10, that's $10,000. Why should these coaches be paying for that? Why should our community be paying for that? The clubs who are already developing, who have a right to help develop our community, if it's part of the contract whereby the MLS players and the ULS Black Players Alliance and the Professional Players Association as an academy make it part of their mandates and part of their contracted agreements, the clubs have no choice, again, hopefully, but to accept that. That's the angle we're looking at as well too. So there's another angle of us putting through more coaches. So players who are senior in their career, 28, 29, looking to now, finish out whatever in MLS, well, they should now have a pathway to then get into coaching and get into coaching at a certain level because we put a program in place. So that's kind of the discussion we've been having at the various levels. I spoke with the president and director of the Black Soccer Management Membership Group. Happened to, funny how small the world is, happened to be a person that I used to work with in Detroit when I had an entertainment company there for a couple of years. He's part of that association, and he, when he heard about what we're doing, he said, you need to talk to our president. So he sent the numbers collectively, and we were able to sit down and have some connections and discussions, and that went really positively. So we're talking with them as well. They've done some good work in terms of actually running programming, looking to share best practices. And like I said, once we're up and officially out there, fully public, within the next month, we'll then start to formalize these partnerships in writing. The Black Players for Change, I met with Justin Morrow 3 different times on 3 occasions. We've been having ongoing conversations. He'll be part and supporting our Females to the Forefront conference, just trying to finalize some of the details around him and seeing how we can work with Black Players for Change. Once we formalize these programs we want to run, it's to take it back to these various groups to find other access to funding, but also access to make sure the programming can work, and making sure that the standards that we put in place for these programs are consistent across the board in terms of not just our community, but these other international communities that you see that are up here on the screen. So we're meeting on an ongoing basis, letting you know and reporting back to you guys kind of what's happening there. And the United Soccer Coach Advocacy Group, I spoke with Nicole Henry on a number of occasions, and just trying to connect back with her to get her included and see from their perspective how we can partner on certain objectives, whether it's presentations on webinars, whether it's cross promotion and partnership of memberships, whether it's delivery of certain programming. Those are some of the things that we're discussing currently. So these things, like I said, they're all in the works, and hopefully, hopefully more than this would come out and be officialized and formalized, but necessarily all of them may not. But I just wanted to be accurate and truthful with you guys, showing everybody where we're at in terms of the process with discussion and negotiation, knowing what's going on behind the scenes. I have another follow-up meeting this week with the Professional Association. I've also been reaching out to various people and owners and whatnot. The Barrie FC owner has reached out. Sorry, not Barrie FC. Barrie 1812 owner has reached out to me directly because of some posts that I put on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot about inclusion and diversity and whatnot. And so I'm going to have another discussion with him to see what they can do as new clubs come in. Those are discussions we have to make sure that there's people of color and people from our community at the table. With that, I've also had a talk with 2 other funders around looking at what we do as a community group to bring in some funding dollars. Again, this is just initial conversations, but everybody I've talked to so far has had really positive outlook on if we can actually achieve what we're saying it is. And part of that is, first of all, a national organization, coast to coast, representation in all markets, because that speaks volumes even to advertisers and also those who might want to fund something. Either they're going to fund an association, and usually don't fund an association. It's just, when you're talking much bigger companies like national organizations like the banks, like TD Bank and CIBC and whatnot. Through the Black Collective of Advisors, I pitched them also on some investment opportunities I thought was available for our community, because the CPL is still looking for investment right now for CPL teams to come in. Wouldn't that be amazing for us as a collective to put together our minds and money from our community and own a franchise that could then be, connected to all of us, so to speak. So those are some ongoing conversations I've been having with a number of funders that are very intrigued right now with the process. Nothing has moved forward, obviously, in the conditions of COVID right now, but there's lots of interest right now in terms of the work's already been done. So it's just a matter of formalizing that and putting into a real presentation that people can look at and then believe that we are the organization we say we are. 1, having national representation. 2, seeing the depth and the breadth of the skill that we have at the table. 4, seeing the actual presentations and the professionalism of what we're presenting. 5, seeing who's actually involved. And 6, knowing that we can actually carry it out from all of our collective backgrounds. When people see the backgrounds of what we have here, when I present it, they're actually like, whoa, you have some really people with some serious skill. I'm not just talking the board, I'm talking from the board, and even all of you who are part of the executive advisors, elders, and so forth. So thus far, it's been nothing but positive, but we know our challenge always comes back to the same thing. It's getting the money into the hands of our community. So this is all talk, but again, I share with you what's been happening and where you are, because some people have also commented that they don't quite know all what's happening. So I wanted everybody to be brought up to speed. There's oftentimes I send information in the chat or whatever have you, and not everybody's able to read that. So we wanted to make a way that everybody would be able to at least, hear what's going on and have this recorded so that you can know the efforts and know how much you guys are needed and wanted to be part of this change. But, nothing can happen overnight. It's going to take time. And we've always said we're in for the long haul. And on top of that, we want to let you know that we're activated on various levels. I try to make sure that these programs run, because at the end of the day, what I found from a lot of these Black community groups who all came out and pumped their fist and took a knee and made statements and did stuff, it was all great because we all have much more awareness and knowledge. But now it's time to do something. And what everybody's looking for are programs. If you don't have programs documented, then what are you doing? Programs around education, programs around providing opportunities, programs around increasing representation from even our youth and participation and stuff. That's what's getting funded, and that's what's getting looked at. So we should be able to get our coaching education somewhat funded, our coaching mentorship, our player showcase, our female conference, maybe even, like I said, some ownership at a League One or a CPL Pro level. Those are the conversations I'm having, because that's about self-determination and self-ownership. And it's about actually leaving a legacy for the next generation. So it's not just myself. I know all the board has been working hard in these conversations and connecting people, and we're going to continue to do that. And once we have more information that's concrete, we'll definitely let you guys know. So with that said, moves us on to the point of questions. I know it's been a lot of information kind of thrown at you guys, but some of you have heard a little more or less along the way. At this point, we want to open the floor to any and everybody who has any kind of comments, feedback, questions of even specific individuals, anything at all. We want to be totally open, and we want to hear your ideas and want to be able to continue to engage you guys as we go forward, because this is something that has to be built long lasting with all of us. So right now we open the floor, and we just turn it over to you guys for whatever you would want to share with us.
Hey, Paul, can you hear me?
Yes, please just
Eddie
announce, and when you guys talk, just announce who you are.
Eddie Roberts.
Okay.
Eddie Roberts. Hey, Paul, thanks very much for all the work that you guys have put in. It's true. My only suggestion is now, do you know what's our membership right now for our association?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't talk about that. I should have. I agreed. agree with that on the membership slide there. So right now we have 50 members registered, and we have 100 members on our chat group, but people haven't made the transition to register. But that's okay. So part of our push was that once we get going more publicly, which we understood this is more to the people inside of our community and soccer community specifically, once we get the directors in place, because I'd rather have done that before we just go up publicly. The goal is within the next month to come up publicly around this conference and around who we are, and then really drive our membership up. Right. So that will be part of the work by having people in the various communities. It's your job to go out in the community you're in and advocate for members to join our association and show them a positive reason as to why to join. It's another, for a new startup organization, we could have done webinars like some of it and just talked about our experiences and whatnot, but we decided there was enough groups out there doing that. So our focus was on our internal groups and word of mouth, which we know is pretty positive, but we're only at 50 right now. Registered members. That's where we took our results from the survey from. So our goal is to get up to like 400 or 500 members. Overall within the next year. So from, this point forward, once we have our conference going forward from there, that's when we really expect our membership to grow.
Okay, just a follow-up question. So what's the, do you take attendance on this, especially in a meeting like today? Do you know the attendance? How many people, how many of the members that actually participated in this? Because you spend a lot of time sharing information. So I just wanted, do we have somebody taking the minutes? Do we have a proper procedure for these meetings?
Yes, so all of our meetings are recorded. Jen was our secretary, so we provide meeting minutes for it, but this wouldn't have meeting minutes because it's a town hall meeting. We do take meeting minutes at every single meeting. So our executive meetings and board meetings, the minutes are available for any member who wants to request them to see them can, and they can look at the recording. We don't make them public because, again, you understand that certain things are kind of private and you have to have certain safe spaces, but minutes are available. Anybody requesting to join any board meeting. So for example, Lyndon had a request to come and see what happens at the board. When the board meetings, he was welcomed in, he came and he participated part of the board meeting, where we allow anybody to do that. And all these are recorded. So there won't be minutes from this meeting because it's a town hall. A town hall is just more to inform and then also to get feedback. If we have formalized meetings, such as our meetings we have in the subgroup with any of the different groups, then meeting minutes are taken there as to what happens in those meetings and whatnot.
Thank you.
So the members that I didn't look exactly, but right now we had 20 people on the call today, as high as 21. Right now we have 16 from our 40 whatever, right?
I just wanted to add on to that, what you were saying to Eddie, but sure. A lot of the pieces, even with the video or whatever, you can get a lot of data from the programs that we're using. We try to use stuff that we can always get some analytics, because data is sort of gold nowadays, right? And one of the biggest issues that our community has is that they always like to say that there's no data. So collecting data is really become a big priority for us going forward. And so yeah, that's also a part of that, Eddie. So I just want.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Eddie.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Paul, Conda Mansory from Edmonton, Alberta.
Nice to meet you, Conda.
You too.
Hey,
so Edmonton. Pardon me?
She was saying Edmonton in the house.
Oh yeah. No, we have a lot of stuff going on here. Like, it's crazy here, right? Mm-hmm. But like, I was wondering, like, so when it comes to like the directors,
yes.
So you guys have a director for each province. So is there a way that we can connect to the directors and see how best we can gather people in Alberta or Edmonton, like Edmonton, Alberta?
Yeah, we're still looking. If sorry to cut you. If you want to even to volunteer and come forth as another director or director there, we're more than open. This is not something that's right. Yeah,
I'd love to, because like I think here, like in the sports of soccer especially, there's not many people like Black people like coaching at a high level. And for us, obviously, we have an academy where most of the coaches are Black. So we run into a lot of problems just because of the way we do things. So I'd love to do that. But like, I just want to ask, because I know there's other coaches that I've told about this association and they're very interested to join.
Yes.
I just want to make sure to see if there's like already someone here that we can connect to.
There's supposed to be somebody. I haven't had conversation with that individual myself. It was previous to me, the person would set it up, and I've been trying to follow up. But we definitely, again, in those areas that, as you notice, what we did in Toronto, those areas that are more remote, to us, it's not about having only one director. You know, if people want to step forward and take that leadership position, we're more than happy to help you develop, because part of that development is, you know, for you is to learn that governance from us and to be able to go into that position and make change too. Maybe one day you're the guy running Alberta, or then stepping up for Canada Soccer as part of the Alberta board. You know what I mean? That's the work we want to do. So don't think that it's only, you're definitely right. We should be able to directly direct you to a director for that area. But if you're willing to step up, we're more than happy to have you as well. So what I would say is please send your contact information in the chat to me, and then I'll definitely follow up with you after, and then make sure too we get all of your coaches, you know, engaged in some aspect. And then again, what you feel you need for your area, let us know, because we're actively looking out there. The person who initially had in mind to kind of run that area wasn't able to, but we also do have, I'm going to put him on the spot now. We also do have somebody else out your way. That's Claude Bolton. He's not in Alberta, but he's in Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call him on now. I'm going to call you up. Claude, say hello and connect with Conde quickly there, because it's always good to know somebody from your zone or your area. Claude, I turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Conde. Conde, I'm just
Hello.
noticing the B2B logo. So you're in, this is, I've never met, but I've heard the name because of B2B.
Yes.
So nice to meet you. And everyone.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
We'll
Yeah,
be in
okay.
touch then. If you put your contact information there, maybe I'll reach out to you and we can have a chat as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that for sure. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for coming forward. That's what's important. And we definitely look forward to connecting and, you know, getting out there more. I know, like I said, we've just kind of been started and a lot of people are wanting to know more and get going, but now is the time for us to make that break and really push to have you guys really get engaged and also find out what the challenges you're facing, because we know like they're different in every area. And then hopefully we can do some work, you know, and that's the power of even having people on the board of Canada Soccer and, you know, Ontario Soccer. And it's not just one person. That's what's really positive now, because I find often, you know, you could be tokenized and it becomes also mentally draining when you're the only one person carrying the weight and carrying the bag, so to speak. When we have more at the table who can help us and advocate, and you bring forth your issues, we can speak positively and help organize, right? So excellent. Thank you so much for coming forward. Please, like I said, put your information there and we'll follow up with you, and or go to the site and register as well too. There's a simple registration link right on the website, blackcoaches.ca. Okay, have all your guys go to the website, blackcoaches.ca, and just register. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I was just going to add on to that. But what you were saying, we were really concerned when starting this, because I worked at Ontario Soccer, but I don't live in Toronto. But things being too GTA centric, that was something as an organization we often got very accused of, that it's always just about that area, and I'm glad to see somebody from outside of the GTA say something, because your experience in the game is going to be a little bit different than and that, and all those identities deserve the same kind of respect and energy, right? But only people from that area can really tell us what is required or what's needed, right? And it's going to be a little bit different than if we're in the GTA, and that's in the important part of this organization, I think. And like you said, like you just made a connection, like that's what we're hoping that we can do more of, and share best practices and what works for your specific area that can maybe used in other areas of Canada or the US, or, you know, we have a lot of connections in the UK or whatever. Like we have Patrick, for instance, Tobo, starting to develop some stuff for our cultural, like our French culture of people of color who are with throughout the world too, because that is a whole different you know, kettle of fish right there. So and respecting that these things exist. You know, I'm glad you brought that up. It just sort of highlights like the kind of connection that needs to happen throughout the organization. And hopefully you guys will we're going to start announcing, I think, more groups and committees and things to develop stuff and getting that kind of feedback from different areas is going to be really important into the development of the organization.
Paul, you mentioned your SWAT work with within the Canada Soccer staff.
Yes.
can you give an example of one or two questions you're posing to them?
Sure. So, obviously a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, right? Like, what do you think from an anti-Black racism perspective, Canada Soccer has done positively towards the Black community? How are we looked at positively in your experiences? They got to tell me, right? Because if you haven't thought about it before, you have to consider that. And then on the, consequent vice versa side, what are some things you think are challenges that, we haven't done? And right off the bat, what they're realizing, they say right now, is what they recognize from technical and staff perspective, there's no Black staff, period. That's a glaring point that no one ever wants to discuss. Now it's documented, discussed, brought to the forefront. And then what are you going to do about it, right? It's one thing to say we have this problem and it continues to exist for 20 years. Now they're put on the hot spot. Everybody's kind of feeling uneasy because that's what conversations do. We have to be comfortable, though, to have uneasy conversations, right? And what's the threat? What's the threat towards us? We can be seen as, it is a threat, because if we don't do something and everybody else is, it can be seen as by the overall membership that we're not doing anything. It's just all talk. And that's a challenge to the brand, and it's a challenge to the overall organization. So, these are some of the questions that I'm putting forth. They gave me 3 staff to talk to, and I'm also talking to a couple more just to get some more information. And then I'll put that forward, right? There, on the same point, there's an opportunity here. It's an opportunity for them to stand up. I said, think of this as a vision, guys. All of us. Imagine the World Cup in 2026 being held in Canada. We see real representation happening for everybody, not just us as Black people, but for everybody, whereby there's representation for females, representation. We're not patting ourselves in the back about how great a job we've done before. I get it. We have, you're right. But that's not what I'm concerned about, right? So I didn't tell them. So that's okay. I'm not getting into that conversation because people like to pat themselves in the back. I get it. But imagine if we could have at the World Cup true representation, standing on that sideline to see 5 or 6 Black people in governance, in board, in leadership, in coaching, standing on the sideline as an example to the rest of the world when World Cup comes, here comes a knocking, because we have this great favored nation status as Canada, being multicultural and the great. But it's a lie, because at the end of the day, the players in the field, and we know the next face and generation of Canada soccer for both the male and female side are Black. So what does that say to you when the next face of the next generation for Canada soccer is that, and you love to tout them all over the place right now, all of us do, I get it, you know what I mean? But then you have, behind the scenes, you have a huge problem that, what are you going to do, hide? You can just say it doesn't exist. You have to acknowledge it. That's the first step. After acknowledging it, I'm all about, okay, what are we doing about it? And if they're willing to do something, I think we as a group have to be the ones at the forefront making that change. And if we're the ones making that change, then we have the ability to access, a position here, to be able to say that we are that organization that's one of trust. We are that organization that you need to look at and go to be able to make these changes, rather than just say we're going to do it all our own self. We can do that too as well. I think I'm a firm believer of always both worlds. We look at Aboriginals, they know they're, Indigenous people are of 2 worlds. So are we, and it's unfortunate for any of you guys that watched the video I posted about, the Black bourgeoisie class, as to what's happened in the last, 100 years and 200 years, 100 and something years in North America, as to the ruling class. And a lot of people who have been in positions of power, excuse the language, have been those of house Negroes. Now, that's not my mentality. My mentality is, you want to make change, we have to be able to, yes, not appease anybody, but work with them. But at the same time, if you don't want to work with me and with us, we'll go and do our own stuff. But you can't go and do your own stuff unless you've built something and built a base and built a foundation. So that's what I'm a firm believer in, that I've always been that way. If you're not going to go and be a part of it, then we can turn around and go and do our own stuff. And I make that quite clear in all the conversations I have at all levels with all people, right? So I won't want to say too much on this, but one of the conversations that did come up was that we might, and again, this is people thinking a bit differently. I said, why might we not be able to have our own sovereignty under Canada soccer? You know what the answer was? Never thought of that before. Interesting. You should actually look at it. You're probably right. So imagine when you look at membership of Canada soccer, I know it's a lofty goal, but imagine the Black Coaches Canada being a member, just like how TFC is a member. And it's not just for us, it's the same thing too for Aboriginals, because we should have specific distinct status under United Nations, under human rights, whatever, that's what we should have. So these are the things we have to look at and think of, because then we can have our own self-determination and a voice directly at the table. We don't have to go through someone else or go through Ontario or go through Saskatchewan, because we're a national organization. We have representation, we have numbers, we're unified, we're running programming. Now we want your sanctioning and we want you part of that membership. That's what pro clubs get. Why? Because they have money. You come in as a pro club, you get it right like that. Or even still, imagine, back to my point, if we had a Black-owned pro club, then we have that say as well, right? You have the ability to be at the decision-making table. So those are some things that people have to look at differently in terms of changing the government. It's not going to happen right now in the next part of this plan because everything's a 3-year and a 5-year strategic plan. Next year, after next year, the plan will be rewritten. So it's about us getting certain people in place for that and having the discussion so people can be prepared for that conversation and that change that may come, right? And that's why timing is so important. So those are some of the conversations, I hope that makes sense, I'm having right now with staff and with board, you know, and to say that this is what has to be looked at. And so from a SWOT analysis, just back to answer your question directly, and this can be done with Ontario Soccer as well. We did the same thing with the subcommittee. They have to start asking themselves these questions. If you did a SWOT analysis from our anti-racist perspective, everybody's talking about building a scorecard and doing stuff. My point, again, not to say it's a conflict, people might say this, but I'm worried about our association as well being recognized as such and being at the table, because what often happens, why I'm saying that, is that we're left out. They hire 3 or 4 people and say, oh, we got it, we're okay. We hired these 3 guys from all over the community somewhere. They come in and we're now doing stuff, and then nothing gets done. And there's no continual advocacy. There has to be somebody or a group or a body that's willing to constantly hold them in check, right? And if you bring in 3 people, they make some program run now, and then 2 years down the line, that program's gone. Or, you know, we had a vice president of Canada Soccer, a black guy trying to make change, or not Canada Soccer, sorry, Ontario Soccer. 3, 4, 5 years later, he gets fed up and he's gone, right? There's no pathway to sustain what was started. So what's important for us is to have a pathway. I could be gone tomorrow. We want the organization to still be there and have that spot and that voice, because the next generation coming in should be able to have that voice. And we're structuring the organization in such a way that in 5 years, 10 years, that we should be able to move into more senior position of an elder or an advisor on the board and let the next generation come in. The problem we have in our community, which is why I structured this organization this way specifically, has been for far too long the intelligentsia. We were told, go to university. Our parents came to this country as whatever, immigrants, whatever, work hard, go to university, get education, whatever, and then you'll get your due. Many of us who are the ages of 40 to, you know, late 50s, we're not in any positions of real power because we haven't been given it. Most of the Black organizations, there's people who are in their 70s and 80s still running those organizations. And they shouldn't be. They should have naturally handed those things over to the next generation, to us. They haven't done so. But I think you're going to see that change now because there's a ground swelling of the young generation coming up now, like I said, who are 25 to 30. And it's a huge part of the population for our community that are pushing and making change and making things happen in entertainment, in music, in sports, right? They're going to have a different position of power and we'll get left out or pushed out. So if we want to be part of that process, we have to make a natural succession program, because there is no success without succession. So for us, the work we're doing is more about getting us to the table to help make the changes. So when there's opportunities, as I say, for you guys to come on and speak or be part of something, I'm going to volunteer and do that, because, you know, it's a chance for us to speak as a community. I'm not speaking as myself, I'm speaking as a community and looking for opportunities for any one of us to come into that fold. Because that's the first thing they said to me when I had that discussion. Okay, can you name 3 or 4 guys that we could use as, you know, potentially, you know, some guys for coach education? And I said, absolutely not. They think about, what do you mean? I said, not unless you're working with us, because how you guys deliver a course and how we deliver a course is different. Part of the conversation was about them delivering a course to the Aboriginal Indigenous people and their experiences. But once again, what they do, they set up a course, they send an instructor, and he dictated to them how soccer works. Right? That's the experience. I'm saying, what would it be like if you had said, okay, what are the 8 modules as part of your course? And in those 8 modules, what do you think you can deliver? Can we have maybe an elder, someone that's not even part of soccer community, an elder who might do a piece on leadership from the Aboriginal perspective? Maybe we sit down in a circle, because that's their ideology, and take it from a matriarchal standpoint, because once again, that's their ideology, be truly inclusive and allow them to help dictate and take feedback onto maybe how we can change the coaching education course. Far too often, our coaching education is, no, this is the way it's done. This is the way it's going to be. You come on, I hire you, Lyndon, I hire you, Conde, I hire you, Trevor. You guys go do it this way. Here it is, go do it. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in saying, what are the pieces you're going to let us deliver? We're going to develop that. We're going to say how it's going to go. You sit back and you could critique us or whatever you want, but we're going to deliver that piece. That's what I'm interested in, right? And that's where the conversation, it takes a little more time. They're saying, okay, interesting, different approach. Yeah, we understand that we can get with that, but now we need to move that forward to the next stage, right? And whether we deliver that ourselves, like I said, imagine a C course that's been delivered by only Black coaches. You can oversee it. You can have your one white guy there. And I say this just like that to them, flatly. You can have your one overseer there, you know, that's fine. But I want to have the Black coaches delivering that course to the Black community. That's what I'm looking for, right? And be paid to do it too as well. And if all the money's not there, we'll help to even find the money. I'm not going to take any excuses as to why we can't deliver these things. So I think that that's the work, and it's a different approach that we've been having. And so it's great that it starts with a SWOT analysis, because it's just looking at those 4 areas. And I got 2 pages of notes from that first meeting, which is really great. And I want to do that again to looking at Ontario Soccer And we can do those things ourselves. We don't have to go back to them. I'm just doing it in an official capacity because it was great that I was allowed to do so from Canada Soccer. But I think that, you know, a lot of these things will be similar. And the work we did with the subcommittee around the policy. I wonder if I should, if I could find that policy quickly and show you. Some of the things that we brought up in that policy was really interesting in terms of what we're asking. And it's interesting, once again, the one white guy in the group, a guy from Ottawa, kept saying, we can't do that. You can't tell them what to do. You can't ask, you can't do it. Once again, white ideology, white frame of mind, right? Why are you telling us what we can and cannot ask for? That's what we need. We need to be asking for these things because that's what's most important, to be able to make that change, right? We have to be able to say that these are the things that we're looking at. And these are the things that are really important, right? Let me see if I can quickly find it, our document to show you guys really quickly. Where did that go? So many emails came through. Final draft, here we go. Again, it's a subcommittee, so I don't know what privacy things, whatever, so I shouldn't be saying too much, but again, really quickly, so just to show you guys, here is, let me just quickly show you share screen. Just give you a concept of where we're going with stuff. Share screen here. You guys can see my screen? Can you guys see my screen? Linda, can you see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so really quickly, scope, right? Objective statement, what we're making, right? Here's some of the points, right? In order to measure progress and achieve outcomes, baseline data is established. Roles for the CEO: must consider equity, diversity, inclusion in reviewing all policies, must consider equity and diversity in making staffing hiring, right? Must deliver Institute of Diversity, Inclusion, Equity within Ontario Soccer's goals. The board must consider
Hold on,
equity.
Paul.
Right.
Like,
You have a Zoom message in the middle of it, and nobody can see the screen.
Okay, sorry, hang on. Let me try sharing again. Oops, cancel. Let me start this again. 1 second. Stop share and new share. New share screen 2. Okay, can you see this here? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to go in detail, just giving you some ideas so you can see where we're going. Because again, I'm not sure what committee rule and whatever. Just want to show you guys an ideology, right? Definitions of diversity, right? And then some of the main points. We looked at all levels: membership, district associations, participation, what the board of directors should be looking at and doing, what the CEO should be doing, right? Publishing the data and making it publicly available, what their findings are. That's the scary part, when they start to see that. And that's some of the work that, to answer you guys as a quick aside, Lyndon and I had a conversation along with Shane in our directors meeting. We agreed we'd form a subcommittee to then at least task and look at some of the challenges faced around collecting the data for what representation is. Like all the executive directors and technical directors, how many are there in the province and how many are Black? I mean, it's one thing for us to say because we know, but it's another to see it in writing. As we're now seeing at Canada Soccer, and you start to look at Ontario and BC, and yes, the things are representative of the area they're in. But when we recognize how low it is in all studies, all research that's coming out now in the Black community is showing, which we already knew, guys, you know, not that we're underrepresented or underfunded or under whatever, it's way under. That's the issue. So they all are realizing because it's shocking people. Well, and it doesn't shock us because we already knew this, right? So these are some of the things that we're talking about in terms of what it is, like, you know, rewriting this policy, having an outcome to say with a purposeful. So the aim is to purposefully reduce racial inequality across all sectors, right? Okay. And to address systemic racism, promote all these areas, coaches, players, match officials, or whatever, right? So, you know, look at this line here, which is, I made sure to put this in: commit to radically increasing racial diversity representation. Radically, right? Doesn't mean that we're going to go from 1 to 2. That's not radical. You know, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, right? So those are some of the things that we're talking about, Lyndon, that are ongoing from policy perspective, because we know that policy is where the stuff changes, and that's where we're going to get the biggest opposition. Because as some of you saw with, you know, U.S. Soccer and their whole policy around kneeling, it came in, as we know, as an effect of what happened with Colin Kaepernick, and specifically because Megan Rapinoe was taking a knee, and they didn't want that. Peaceful protests, all you want, we talk about being peaceful, pumping a fist, nothing changed. They put a policy in place that you can't do that. It's only through policy now, with everything that's happened and people joining the board and U.S. Soccer discussion, 70% voted in favor to take away that ruling, right? That's where the policy is going to be made and change to be made, because I think our generation has done enough of it whereby we've been in front, we protested, we've done stuff, but we haven't been able to make some long-lasting change because it goes away with the next change in administration. So if we can get these things into policy and into governance, we can make some changes, which is, I think, really important. So the work that I think you, and Shane got to do in that area is really important as well, from identification purpose. But then it's going to feed into this this point here. And I think, again, we had an opportunity right now to be able to deliver this e-learning series to talk about what the problem is. So now districts, clubs, coaches, parents can't say they're not aware. If they're not aware, go watch this video that's been produced by Ontario Soccer as to the existence of this and how bad it is. Then we can work on policy as to why it's got to change. So when it comes down, hopefully, this is the hope now, we don't know for sure, there won't be as much objection at the district levels and the club level because they're aware of what the challenges that are really going on they face, right? That's kind of the ideology in terms of how we're approaching it. Thoughts around that, or any other questions, or? Okay.
I was just going to add in regards to what you were saying, in regards to funding. Part of why this conference is so important, it's an opportunity to generate an amount that could make us free from having to go to others for money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of freedom that we need, because oftentimes when you're going after a grant or something like that, you are enslaved to what they think is important. And oftentimes with a lot of the grants that I'm looking at, I'm just like telling the board, it's basically me building the argument to say, well, what you think is important isn't really that important because of this reasoning, and it makes it difficult for us then to go and get the kind of funding we need to do like anything, right? Like any kind of programming that we want to do. So the way that the female to the forefront is, as it's going to be very international in regards to numbers. It's not just going to be national because of the people that we think we have that are going to be involved, and the kind of networking that we have within our membership as well as with our partnerships, and the people, some of those partners will hopefully be a part of this. It's going to open us, give us an opportunity to build the fiscal part that we need in order to gain independence, and hopefully we won't have to go then to anybody else, and we can keep to our belief of how we hope things are going to or things should change, and we don't have to really answer to anybody. Right. And that's unfortunately especially with not-for-profits and typical of any sport organizations, they're built up in a very stereotypical not-for-profit way where you're enslaved to Sport Canada or whoever your federation is or whatever. This will allow us to be completely free and independent as we want to, and still have associations with some of these important organizations that we want, but have the freedom to build it in the way that we think the need is for the various communities that we're working with. So I just wanted to add that on into the importance of the things that we're doing. We have there's a lot of great fundamental ideas and a lot of enthusiasm, but without the fiscal part, it's hard to get things completely accomplished. So
100%. Okay, I think we're pretty much done. We're on time though, because we said we'd go from 3 to 5:30. The timing worked out pretty good in terms of how long each piece was. Hopefully you guys didn't find it too long and boring. There was a lot of information passed back to you guys today, but it was important that we go through everything. So we record this too for those that missed the calls and stuff in different time zones and whatnot. And this is just typical of building this kind of organization. I'm involved in a couple others kind of trying to do the same thing, but it's really important the work we're doing. So I thank you guys for coming on today. And again, at any point in time, any feedback you guys have, any comments, don't feel any way, whether positive or negative, doesn't matter. It's we all need it to grow. When we say negative, it's not necessarily negative, it's areas of improvement. And we know we can improve as an organization too, but we all facing challenges, time and money and resources, but our hope is to get those things fulfilled. So I'm spending so much time I am blessed right now with being a teacher and being able to teach online. All my courses are online right now that I don't have to spend a lot of time in class, and it's already curriculum that's built, but that won't last forever. So now is the time for us to invest heavily to get the structure down. Once the structure is down, it's almost all completed. I would say about 90%. Then it's going public, and then we have to really just amass that following and get buy-in. Because it's one thing to go and say, yeah, we're an organization, we got 50 guys, or it's another to say we're a national organization, we got 500. That's a big difference. And it doesn't cost anything, it's for free. So there's no reason why people shouldn't be signing up. And you guys shouldn't be advocating to everybody you know who's a Black coach. Any Black coach that you know, you should be advocating. Coach, referee, administrator, you should be advocating to them to just join, right? Because at the end of the day, guys, strength in numbers. And numbers are important because when we go before bodies, to get funding, that's the first thing I'm going to ask. Who's your membership? Where are you? How big are you? And we're not going to say 50 members. No one's going to give us money for 50 members, right? So it's important work that we all have to do over the next 2, 3, 4 months, because when it comes time and they're going to ask those questions, I see them being asked right now with other organizations. We can't be at that spot where we're caught with our tongue in our hand or our hand out, right? So I just leave it to you guys, definitely, that we can't do this without you guys, all of you guys. And so I ask, starting going forward now, to just push the word of mouth. Any feedback you have, anything you need, anybody has any specific needs or needs to move ahead in an area faster than we're moving, that's fine. Let's just get going. We want to have the representation. We want to have the programming going on. We want to have everybody at the table saying that they're happy with the progress that we're making come the next year. So I encourage you all, as you guys are all on this call, you've given your time. So I know I'm preaching to the converted, but I just need you guys to now spread the word, and go forth as good disciples, so to speak, is the word, I guess, and continue to spread the gospel of what we're trying to do, and get buy-in. And you guys are the representatives on, boots on the ground. It's not about an executive committee or the 4 or 5 of us who are doing the work behind the scenes right now. And we don't want it to be always behind the scenes. We want to be out there in front. It's just that we are fortunate with some of the people I chose initially, or we worked with initially, that we had some time as well, because a lot of others I came to that could have, put more work in, but everything for a reason in a season. And some people have, more time at different times in their life and their stage. And we're more than open to having you guys come on board and join us in any capacity. So if you have an idea to do something, you want to do something, you want to be the charge or the lead in that, don't hesitate. Text, call, phone, email, whatever, and say, hey, I want to do this. And you're going to hear from me over and over. Yep, go for it. How can we back you? How can we support you? Because again, it's another program, and eventually where we're going, that's another spot to be able to garner income for all of us, whether it's funded or not. We're more than happy to find a way to then find that funding and disseminate it down to you through some of the centralized programming we're looking at. And I think that's a huge advantage of having a national body like this, where we haven't had it before in our community. So it's not there, but hopefully we can get there. So I'll leave you with that, guys. I bid you adieu. Unless anybody has any final words, I give you guys a chance to go around to say anything. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Claude.
As Jennifer was saying, you're making contacts. I just wanted to say it's impressive that some of the people, or all the people, at least the ones that I knew that are on the call, and I didn't know they were involved. But I just wanted to say to Mr. Hooper, because we haven't really ever touched base, we have to get guys like Doug McNaught involved and back in these things.
Yes.
We've had some good stories.
If you can find Doug, when I was at SC Toronto, he just left the year before, and I tried to find him. I don't know where he's at. Right? We got to try and find him. If you guys out there that are on our radar list, if you guys can help with, again, anybody that's been, that was one of the comments we had. How come we don't have a lot more guys who are involved in a high level of soccer in Canada, part of what we're doing? And I said, it's not through lack of trying or lack of reaching out to them. I think a lot of them are, so disgruntled with just things that have happened and or not sure or don't have the connections to the individuals they see running the organization. It doesn't mean that they can't come in at any point in time. I agree with you. So once again, if you guys have the relationships, we're more than happy to ask you guys to extend to those guys and get them on board, because this is not for any one of us. This is for all of us,
Good.
Yeah, Claude, what you're saying is so important. We get a lot of that of why people or certain people are not joining, and unfortunately in our community in the past there has been not so reputable things that have come up, or that they or people felt either taken advantage of, or they didn't like the way things were being handled, etc., and it was very, and some of the stuff in organizationally was very cloak and dagger, like, so it's not being transparent. And that was one of the things at the board level we talked about, like how we know that is an issue, how do we deal with it. we feel transparency and being really open is the only way to do it and to change some of the attitudes. Oftentimes in the community, it's survival, right? It's about survival of the fittest. And if someone sees somebody doing well, they want to see how they can get their piece, sort of idea. And we get why that happens, right? We understand why that those survival tactics have been used. So it'll take some time in doing like the events and doing some of the like other pieces that we're doing to convince, I think, some of them that this is just being run differently, right? And it's us sort of having a little bit of empathy towards where they're coming from, and that we're trying to do our best to show and be transparent to what we're doing. So it might take a little time to get people on board, and that's part of the issue with, like I said, with the membership, as Paul had mentioned, because we're fighting against a mentality that we formed within our own culture. Like, this is not anybody else forcing that. That's our own issues within the culture, and that's been a long time happening, and we see that within other countries. You see it throughout the Caribbean, a lot of these types of issues. So we're coming in with trying to do the right thing, trying to be open as much as we can, and then we can only show them with our product, right, and our services, and that's what's going to be important. Are we going to have people come and join in at times that we think are on the same path as us, and then we realize that they're not? Yeah, that is going to happen, and it should be expected. But you have to give people the opportunity to change too. So we have to keep that all in the back of our mind as we're moving forward with some of these pieces. So I think it's going to be really, really important in order to build up that membership like we're talking about. Anyhow, that's enough for me.
Thank you.
Sometime, that's all. Sorry, Claude, go
Okay.
ahead. Okay.
So I just have just a final comment, Paul,
Sure.
Paul and Jennifer.
Yep.
Okay. The reason why I asked for the membership is just basically, I think everybody's had it to that. It's very critical because we can talk as much as possible. If there's no participation and commitment, we're not going to achieve our objectives. Right. And this is something that is very unique to our community. Okay, and the fact is that only a lot of people talk, but only few are willing to work. And this is Paul, Jennifer, you guys already know. I mean, I've served in boards, so we have to attract people. And there's not only the numbers, but they need to participate and commit. Commitment is very important. For example, this is a very key meeting. Out of our 50 membership, we only have less than 20 participate in this. So this is eventually that other people get discouraged. So I just wanted to, this is just, I'm just throwing this out that we have to not only talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. Mm-hmm. And if we're not going to participate and commit, it will take us a lot longer to build and be able to compete with the other, for what we're trying to accomplish. That's my final comment.
Agreed.
Along those lines, is there, I don't know if strategy is the right word, for turning those 50 or so that are on the WhatsApp group that haven't registered?
Yes, well, it's going to come a time. I'm not too worried about numbers right now because that was never, we're not public facing. When you understand the psyche of our community, the only way our community is going to grow and buy into what we're doing is if they see you doing a bunch of stuff. And this is not just for soccer. Like I said, I'm on a few other Black boards, and it's the same challenge, even what I have there, because they're doing tons of stuff, but nothing comes of it. We said that we're not going to be that kind of organization because you can do tons of stuff, tons of presentations. So for example, what is it most organizations are doing right now? They're doing conversations on coaching education, conversations, right? and they're not even doing any much mentorship, and they're discussing events whereby coaches are telling their stories. Well, everybody's doing that, right? But what is that doing? That's educating the generic audience. That's educating the bigger population out there. What is that doing to actually make change? What's the change that you want? If I asked you for one thing that you wanted, all you guys, you just came up, because that was what we were going to do, but timing and the group was too small, was going to breakout sessions and say, break into groups of 4 or 5, discuss for 10 minutes and then come back. If you guys want to stay on, we can still do that. If you wanted to see one thing that you guys want to see changed at any level, what would that one thing be? And then come back and tell us. And then we can go and work towards that. That to me, with only 20 or 50 people, is much more important than having 500 that do nothing, right? Because it's actually going to make change in something and it's going to have effect. So the things I'm talking about, again, it may not happen, but whether we have 50 guys or not, if I can get a coaching education in place, program in place, and I can get these pro clubs to acknowledge that and put some money aside for coaching education, and we can put through 100 kids in coaching education, and we develop 100 coaches for the Black community in the next 3 months, I would have done more than anybody else has done when it comes to Black people in soccer, any sport, anywhere in the world in 3 months. That's worth it to me, rather than sitting there talking. Back to what we did. When we talked about the opportunity for League One, and last year, we went back and forth, a lot of complaining. I won't say any names or call any names, but there are those who said, well, we're just going to do our own thing anyways. They did that. They focused on their kids. They sent their kids forward. What did I do differently now? I went and I approached our community. It was only 6 teams end up in the end. It was supposed to be more. And some people said, yeah, they want to be in, but then they dropped out. We said, and then some people complained that they weren't involved. But when we asked them, they didn't get stuff done on time. They didn't show up. They didn't, whatever. But did that stop us or deter us? Not at all. We still put through 6 coaches, 6 referees, 4 games. It was supposed to be 6 games. We had a body of evidence, and we got eight kids got scholarships directly from that process, directly, right? Now we can speak directly to that. Had we done nothing, we wouldn't have anything at all. Now we have something done. How many guys, you know, in that process put on a showcase in the midst of COVID and got 6 or 8 scholarships for kids and got connection to coaches and actually did something and did it at a cost which is feasible. We broke it down a cost per player and a cost per team up to them. And it worked out to $120 for good refereeing, for all the stuff you don't get, no PDL. You don't even get that stuff in League One, maybe sometimes. And we provided at a cost, and it was only our community delivering it, and it was totally safe. We had COVID spray where we had vital oxide, we had temperature checks, we had all that stuff that no one else was doing. No one in the country, besides this pro level, was doing what we did. And that was already done. And it wasn't done by a whole big, huge amount of people. Our community likes to look at the numbers and likes to look at, it means something because there's lots of numbers. But that's unfortunate. That's just the generation that we're in. I'd rather stick to the quality, not the quantity. There's both sides needed, but it's more about the quality. So at the end of the day, we did something very good, and that's going to move forward now. That one there is going to move forward, and we'll extend it. When we go more public, people will see more and people will want to come in. Part of it is we've been quiet on purpose, because what happens is when you go too public too fast, I've seen in a lot of other Black organizations, and I decided to try to help us understand and structure it specifically this way, because what happens is you get a lot of talk about, back to the point of doing stuff, people get upset, and then you get the splintering, which kind of happened anyways, right? But that's not what's important to me. What's more important is us actually doing something, putting some programs in place. And if they're not going to do it at that level in partnership with us, then we have to take it on ourselves and do it from a coaching, education, coaching competency standpoint. That's one of the things I had Jason working on. He's been working on that you saw him come back with, and that's going to cost. We might have to charge our, each other for it. And we know how we are when it comes to charging, but it's more important the quality, that it's actually coaching competency. Because when you go on a coaching course, don't tell me, and again, I'm not trying to judge or say anything bad about Canada Soccer, Ontario Soccer, whatever, but don't tell me it's all about competency and how well you are competent and helping you make you better. It's more about getting the badge. Would you guys not agree?
Yeah.
So if we change that ideology to more about helping you get better, the quality. I'll give you an example. This is what I already did, Eddie. I keep saying what I already did. Now what I'm going to go do, what I already did in that short time. I had 4 coaches come to me and ask about helping them with their National B license. And one didn't end up following through, but the other 3, I said they wanted me to help them document with the actual lesson plans and understand. So I helped them with that. Then one coach said to me, well, I need to actually get my sessions in. So I'm not just going to go give you a session on a session. You have to come and watch me work. I'm going to watch you work. Then you come back a 3rd time and then run it. And I want you to see if through that process, if you get better. I want you to just understand how I do things and how I set up, so then you can see just from my perspective. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not critiquing you. I'm just showing you what I do. He came, drove from from Hamilton, spent the 2 hours on one of my sessions, watched. Next session, I set it up that he's running the whole thing. You prepare the lesson. I critique the lesson. You go over, you set it up. And a couple of times along the way, I just stopped him and said, have you thought about this? Actually, you know what? You're right. I didn't think about that. Have you looked at it this way? from another perspective in terms of you being marked as well, because this is what they're expecting you to deliver. Sometimes you have to deliver a little bit of what somebody wants. Not that you're doing anything wrong, but I want you to think of that. He said, excellent point, good, whatever. We had another session after that. He came back to a third session. Then I said, okay, what do you need now? He said, I need a field and a team. No problem. We were doing the showcase. We got that. Called up one of the guys, said, let's get him a field. Got the field, got the players ready to go. Just pay for the field. And we're ready. You come in and run the session as a guest coach. He came back, and after he said, you know what? I'm not ready. That was his assessment. I said, why do you say you're not ready? Because I didn't consider this. I need to practice this more. I said, good, because that's usually what I go through myself. I'm not ready to really do something until I do it 3 or 4 times. Then I'm comfortable with it. Now, when I go in front of you, I'm just doing it, not even thinking about it, right? And that's what he came to understand through that process. And time was running out anyways. It was getting closer to Christmas and whatever. So he still has to come back and do that session. But I'm just saying that through that process, he realized where he's a little bit inadequate, where he needs to get a little better, and where he's not ready. And now he can prepare himself and feel comfortable. So it was a comfortability perspective of assessment of quality. Now, if there's maybe 20 guys doing that now, not just one guy, I did it as an example, then that means so much more. You know what I mean? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Eddie. It'll come a time where, we're, like I said, my goal is between March to August. That's when we have to grow our numbers. That's our marketing pushed out arm. And again, I didn't want to market until we had the stuff ready for the conference. We're almost there. So we're going to start in the next 2 weeks, getting it out there. I was preparing you guys by having some directors meetings, having a couple other meetings. So we're all getting ready. That's why there's town hall now. We're preparing. Now we're going to go. And I agree with you. We have to convert those guys and get them to stop sitting on just a chat and doing some work and engaging, whatever. But guess what? There are certain percentages of the population that you'll never convert. That's part of audience segmentation. So when you start to study, and this is something I have a lot of background in for my marketing background, and you do customer segmentation, there's always going to be certain people who will never engage. You're just going to watch.
Yeah.
There's going to be another set of people who will watch to criticize. There's another set who will watch, but when they watch and they realize that you've actually turned stuff around, they'll get involved. And guess what? In building this organization, the past 8 months that I've seen all those types. Now, it would be wrong for me to judge anybody and get upset at people or say, oh, you're not this, you're not that. Because I think that we all do that in general as a community, because again, we want to see stuff work and it doesn't happen. But I think now being more mature and seeing things and also being involved in a number of community organizations, people will move from one customer segmentation to the next all the time, right? We can't be worried about those ones that are not. We just have to really worry about the ones that are. And I agree with you, Eddie. I would say I give up and I throw caution to the wind and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. If I didn't see enough people initially doing it, I think we do have enough. You only need about 20 to 50. You don't need 200, 300, right? Once those 20, 50 are all engaged in doing stuff, then we can look at the others. So my point is just to give you my thoughts, not to say that I'm right in any manner, or we're only going to go that way. I do agree with you 100%, but I'm just saying I think it's all timing and kind of where we're at. And the big point too was, I think everybody got caught up with George Floyd and wanted to do something. And now you look at every Black organization, they're all having meetings about, okay, what now? What next? You know what I'm saying? What are we going to do now? And how do we make this sustainable? How do we keep this going? When we looked at that from the very beginning. Now they got to take another 6 months and try to figure that out. We already know that. We already know what we're doing, how to make it sustainable, what we have to do, where we're going to go. We already know all that stuff, which is really important. So it's kind of put us at least ahead in that sense, not ahead being out there in front, but as we start to ramp now. And one of the things that I say that kills organizations and kills company is unmanaged growth. You're not prepared to handle the growth because you didn't plan for it in advance, and it starts coming and then you're like, okay, what do I do now? Whereas we went the other way. Let's keep it small, keep it tight, figure out who wants to be part of it, grow from that perspective. And then once we get to a point of comfortability, then we can say, okay, let's put it out there and grow, because we have the generals in place. We have directors, like you saw the gentleman asking, Conde, do you have somebody in that area? Well, if we had ran out and done this from the very, very beginning, we would have nobody. Yeah. Right? Which most organizations say they're a national organization. They're not. They're Toronto-centric at best, or Ontario-centric, right? And you would have nobody. We took the work months on end of calling people all across the country, of making sure they're engaged. Now, some are saying they haven't seen stuff happening, so they're not as engaged right now. We have to re-engage them. You're right, but that's okay. We will re-engage them, because we do have a platform, we do have a program, we do have a structure, we do have good, all the good things that you'd want to be a part of an organization. If we didn't have that, I'd be the first to say, you know what, throw my hand up and say, maybe it's not what I want to do. But I'm really encouraged by, and you heard a number of people say it. You heard Lyndon say it. You heard Claude say it. You heard, even Conde come on. You can hear people's actual true sentiment of them really believing that we're gonna do something and make some changes. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you. Yep. It's good.
Paul, it's Lucky.
Hey,
I just want to remind folks a little bit too that, inclusion and education is a key component here.
Mhm.
And so if membership is going to minimize inclusionary practice from people, then membership shouldn't be necessarily the thing at the forefront of us right now. So I like the fact that you're talking about membership moving forward. We want to be able to get this information out and include everybody at the front end. And hopefully, as people see the benefits of what you're doing, that's when they choose to jump on, right? We see so many examples of where we have forced membership and people participate from that place, and then we get exclusion at the other end.
Yep.
So just want to be mindful of that, that we want to be open and inclusive as much as possible and not create barriers for participation.
100%. Very good point.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to add on to that, like Lucky, that was so right on. One of our biggest things that we've talked about is like one of the things that frustrates us the most about playing soccer in Canada is paid the kind of, it's always been a pay to play system, and it's becoming just much more expensive. And to be a part of a membership, they rely on their membership in order to fiscally make stuff happen, and that's who they keep going back to. And that's not, we don't want that kind of formula. So that's why some of the other pieces that we've talked about is running it more like pieces of it like a business in itself, right? Even though it's a not-for-profit, whatever we do will go back into building out the organizations, allowing easier access, and from a fiscal standpoint, because obviously, like if we're trying to get young people, how much are young people when they're going to university or something like that? How can they afford to be a part of a membership, right? Like these are all issues. And I always say I'm West Indian, heavy on the Indian. I don't like to take money out of my purse. So so how do we go and make it so that we can get people to be involved, but not let money continue to be a barrier that it is. That's what happens. Like if you don't have the support at home and you've made a provincial team, right? There's a lot of money that has to go into that. And if you've got a single parent at home whose responsibility it is to, we don't live in a country wherever, used to be takes a village, and everybody pools their money and supports maybe somebody, in your community. It's not really like that anymore. So that has to do with build the kind of culture we're trying to build. But we really want to make sure that a fiscal barrier is not something we want to keep perpetuating in the game. So
That's one quick point. It's funny you made a comment there, and same thing with Lucky, that membership, right? And it's interesting because that's been the model, as I refer back to what we had said earlier in the presentation. There's basically three main ways that funds and participation is generated: events, programs, and membership fees. We put membership fees to the last and membership to the last because we think first of all events, which we know in our community, then programs. So we've done one event, we're looking to do another one, then we need to follow up with programs after that, then membership will come. So if you notice, it's structured ideally and purposefully in that way as to our ideology as well, because sometimes people, like you said, you're 100% right, Eddie, talk about the stuff they're doing. We're not talking about what we're doing, it's what we've already done. We committed a lot of time, energy, money, effort already to do these things and get going. Now, it doesn't mean they'll be successful, but at least we will have lived the ideology we're talking about. So when we go out, we give examples of what we're talking about. It's not just lip service because we've already done it. So that gives us another leg up when we're presenting to people in front of them, because we've already have a proven case. And from a marketing perspective, it's a lot better to come from something that has worked. So when I'm having discussion with funders, it's not what we're going to go do. It's that we need your money to grow what we've already done. And that's what pleases people, because I don't need your money from ground up to get going. I need your money basically to expand and extend what we already want to do, right? And then there's at least a model that they can look at and buy into, say, yeah, we like what you're doing, we agree with you, that makes sense. And soccer is a little different when it comes to that stuff, because soccer is really governed way more heavily than any other sport. When you talk to people in basketball, they don't get why we have to do some of the things we have to do. They don't understand how we have to register and what we have to register and pay registration fees. They don't understand that you can't just go and kind of create your own teams or your own clubs, your own leagues, right? They don't understand that. That's constantly the conversation we have. What are you talking about? That's the way soccer is. But, think about soccer. It's governed by the district, then it's governed by the province, then it's governed by the country, then it's governed by FIFA. And all those rules roll downhill. So as much as we think you can go out and just do what you want, you can't, you know? And that's the one thing I think people forget a lot. That's not a fault of Canada Soccer or Ontario Soccer. That's the fault of FIFA. FIFA has certain rules. As you see what's going on in the Caribbean and money and transfer and all that stuff, right? So at the end of the day, we're unfortunate that we're in the kind of sport that does not help us as well. But I think the ideology first, which we're actually living up to, taking a different approach, design thinking approach, doing things differently, listening to our constituents. Like I said, those leagues came about because of opportunity, but also because of what the coaches had said to us in survey, in registration. So we have, you know, at the end of the day, it's not a huge sampling, but I'm pretty sure it's decent enough. I've looked at a lot of survey samples of that size, and it's, you know, you have to start thinking about how big is the Black community in Canada. I've actually been working with another group to do some research on that. When you start knocking it down, any sample size, whatever it is, of about 100 to 200 is great. You have representation. Because if you think about it, it's 1.2 million Black people, right, in all of Canada. And then you break that down to ages of participation in a sport. Then you break it down into participation, who's participating in the sport. And you're going to break it down to, you know, how much, you know, numbers you have. So at the end of the day, like I said, if we can get to 500, that's amazing. You know, I'm targeting at least, you know, a couple hundred for sure. Because when you think about the amount of coaches, we see a lot, and we're still heavily Toronto centric, but, you know, soccer is still the biggest sport. And so we shouldn't have a huge issue in getting there. And once we set our structure proper and we get stuff going, there's no reason why we can't stop and expand into other sports if we have the proper model and the right way, which I could then see us easily growing into basketball, volleyball, you know, hockey, all these other things as well too, to provide some of the same opportunities and structure. But soccer's just made sense because it's a much bigger sport for participation and numbers. But going back to the studies and going back to, you know, everything we do, we're not doing it, again, understand that we said everything that we're doing is informed from research and study behind it. So it's been purposeful why we've gone this direction. And we also check ourselves. That's part of the design thinking that Jen will tell you. And she's big on that. And she's always behind us kicking and saying, remember this, guys. So when we decided, okay, even though I had an opportunity to run that league, I said, is it the right thing to do? I went back and looked at the survey, and guys said that we have to do something for player development. So I naturally went to the group and said, hey guys, this is an opportunity for player development, and it could go from this to this to this. Ideally, everybody said, yeah, that's great. That's definitely the direction we want to go. So we were also confirmed by our membership in terms of the right thing. Now, maybe nobody didn't know about it at the time, and we kept it quiet on purpose because we didn't want it to be shut down, because people would come in and then, you know, we just left it to the people who were participating and the parents and players, and word kind of got out. And I had a lot of people, I know in the soccer community, who came and showed up and kind of wanted to see what's going on. And some kind of showed up and hid and didn't want us to even see they were coming to watch what we're doing. No lie. They came, they snuck and watch and see what's going on, right? But, you know, that just goes to show you, right, in terms of community and whatever. So we know we have something good on our hands. We just have to see if we can continue and perpetuate it. And it meets also the ideology plus the research. So hopefully with all that, it should work. It just comes down to now we got to prove that it's going to work by facing the objections that are going to come and also the obstacles, because that's the one thing about the Black community. The Black community has always done really wonderful things. Why we have problems is because we always are interfered with. And we always face opposition. There's somebody who does not want us to do what we're doing because of usually some kind of capitalistic reason, right? And that's really what it comes down to. So for us, we think we're on the right path because we have the research. Like I said, you know, all that work Jen has been doing, it's all informed from, you know, that one sheet she was showing you from a 4-year PhD doctorate study about why Black females aren't involved in sports at the highest level in terms of, you know, oversight. And I continue to reach out to Black females right now on LinkedIn every week. I'm in connection with another one, right, about this thing, and they gravitate to what I'm saying because they understand. And I could not have done that. I can only do that now because I've understood what Jen's been saying, and I listened to the doctor, and I went and looked at that research. You know, so these are things too we wanted to disseminate to you guys as well. As Black males in leadership positions, we have to change how we're thinking as well, because it affects that side of it too for us, right? So that's the stuff, like I'm saying, we're looking at and we're informed on, that I'm just really hopeful that you know, these things will bring about some change, right?
Good.
Anybody else have any questions or comments, thoughts? Okay, great stuff. So the thoughts now is, you guys can tell me, to have another one of these town halls, a bigger one, in May. So because we have the big conference coming up in April, so we're going to focus in on that. We're going to ask you guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Jason Day or an Applewhite.
Oh, it's just trying. Okay. So if you guys are okay with that, that'll be the one we want bigger participation. We're going to plan a big one in May, because we think that return to play, people getting busy again before we go off for the summer. And we can also announce what we're going to probably do for the summer, as well as hopefully what we might do for Emancipation Day around August. And then hopefully we get a much bigger buy-in from our own constituents, as the next town hall will be scheduled for May. So right now we've got March, April, May, 3 months down the line. It'll be all of our goal to see that we have maybe, a couple hundred people on that call, 400 or 500 people on the call.
At Lincoln's election to the presidency and the
Any
challenge.
feedback on that? We good with that, guys?
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Just wanted to throw in, like, anybody, we're starting to need some volunteers. So if anyone who wants to be a part of the conference, because we can use some people as moderators or people in behind the scenes to kind of see what we're doing as we're getting up to it. That will be great. You can just message myself or Paul in regards to that, because coming down to it, we're 2 months out, so we definitely have some hands on deck.
See, your mic is on.
Thank you.
You want to talk? Trevor, you want to talk or anything?
Basically, what I just wanted to say is thank you, first of all. And we know how unique the Black community is. We tend to compete against each other, firstly. That's something that's fact. We tend to critique each other instead of binding or getting together. So the small numbers that we have to start, as you've repeatedly said, once we have these members committed and move forward, I truly believe that the others will slowly but surely gravitate once they start to see the positiveness in what we do. So I just want to say thanks for everything.
Thank you, Trevor. That means a lot coming from you. A long time for those guys who know Trevor. Trevor's one of them guys who've been around for like 25, 30 years. so thank you for that. It's always good to have that vetted from an old pro who's been around for a long time,
Veteran.
Yes, sorry, veteran. That's the term. All righty. Okay, guys, I won't keep it anymore. We will we'll end it now, and then make the recording available. We will have another directors meeting next month. We just have one, and then we'll try to see where we can get more participation ideas and continue to grow this thing. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and have a great day. And we look forward to continue to connect with all you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thanks.